Tonight we enter the year 1934 beneath a pale Iraqi sky, where a workman lifts a clay fragment from a forgotten floor. The site lies near the ancient city of Kish, where British and American archaeologists once uncovered temples, graves, seals, and tablets pressed by hands long vanished. The fragment seems ordinary at first. It is small, cracked, and darkened by centuries of dust, yet along one broken edge, several signs appear in an arrangement that troubles the excavators. They seem to describe rulers who came before the gods later remembered as the Anunnaki. No trumpet sounds across the ruins. No one declares that history has changed. The tablet is wrapped, numbered, and placed beside hundreds of other fragments. That is how mysteries often begin. They do not arrive with thunder. They wait inside storage boxes, beneath careful handwriting, until someone notices that one line does not belong. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the night settles around you, share your location and local time below. Perhaps you are listening beside a rainy window, beneath a warm blanket, or in a quiet room where even the walls seem older after midnight. You now stand within the excavation trench. Heat presses against your shoulders, although dawn has barely passed. Fine dust clings to your skin, somewhere beyond the mounds. A donkey complains with impressive confidence, as if personally offended by archaeology. Canvas awnings stir in the dry breeze, wooden trays hold beads, pottery shards, animal bones, and pieces of clay covered with wedge-shaped marks. The marks are cuneiform, one of humanity's earliest writing systems. Records from ancient Mesopotamia confirm that scribes pressed reeds into wet clay more than 5,000 years ago. They recorded grain, livestock, wages, land, prayers, legal disputes, and the inconvenient behavior of neighbors. Civilizations may rise beneath sacred stars, but someone still has to count the goats. Researchers at the University of Chicago and Oxford University have spent generations studying such tablets. Their work reveals that writing first served administration as much as literature. Long before kings commissioned heroic poems, temple officials tracked barley rations and labor assignments. Clay became memory. A city could preserve obligations beyond the lifetime of any witness. This fragment, however, appears different. Its signs are uneven, as though copied from an older original. Some characters resemble forms used during the early dynastic period. Others seem deliberately archaic, perhaps chosen to make the text appear ancient. The surviving lines mention a time when kingship had not yet descended to the cities. They speak of an age when the rivers followed unfamiliar courses, when cultivated fields were scarce, and when unnamed powers divided the earth. The damaged surface refuses to explain who those powers were. Your fingers hover above the clay, though you know not to touch it. The tablet carries the faint smell of dry soil and old mineral salts. Its edges are rough. Along the reverse, a thumbprint remains preserved, left by the scribe who shaped it. That print feels strangely intimate. A person once held this object while the clay was soft. Perhaps he copied a temple tradition. Perhaps she repeated words learned from an older teacher. Perhaps neither understood the story completely. The first readable phrase may be translated as, "Before the great assembly took its seats." That wording matters because Mesopotamian myths often describe divine councils. The Anunnaki appear in several traditions as a group of powerful deities connected with authority, fate, the underworld, or the ordering of society. Their roles change across centuries and cities. They are not presented through one fixed story. Ancient religion was rarely neat enough for modern charts, yet the fragment seems to place another order before them. The next line is incomplete. It names those who held the boundaries of the Black Land. The phrase may refer to cultivated soil, because Mesopotamian farmers distinguished rich river mud from the pale desert beyond. It may also describe a symbolic world bounded and controlled by the beings whose names have disappeared. A third line contains a title rather than a personal name. It can be read as keepers of the first measure. That phrase invites caution. Ancient scribes used measurement language for land, grain, architecture, and cosmic order. A ruler who established measures might simply be a legendary lawgiver. A priest might describe the gods as surveyors of creation. Still, the title carries an unsettling calm. These were not wandering giants or chaotic monsters. They were organizers. They measured. They divided. They assigned. A quirky detail appears near the lower break, beside a sign associated with reeds. The scribe scratched a tiny fish. It may be a correction mark, a personal symbol, or nothing more than boredom during a long copying session. Some scholars have found similar miniature drawings on school tablets, where students practiced signs and occasionally left animals, faces, or careless marks. Even ancient scribes seem to have doodled during lessons. The fish sits beneath a line describing a house built where fresh water met salt water. Mesopotamian tradition often imagined the earliest sacred places beside primeval waters. The southern landscape itself encouraged such visions. Marshes spread between channels, reeds rose taller than a person. Boats moved silently through green corridors while birds scattered above dark pools. Your mind drifts into that forgotten wetland. The air becomes heavy with mud, fish, smoke, and crushed reeds. Insects hum above the water. A distant settlement stands on a raised bank, its walls shining beneath the sun. There are no vast monuments yet, no carved royal victories, no crowded processions beneath painted gates, only huts, storage rooms, narrow boats, and the patient labour of families learning how to survive between unpredictable rivers. In that world, control of water becomes control of life. A channel opened at the correct season can feed hundreds. A blocked canal can destroy a village. The person who understands flood patterns may seem more than human. Knowledge becomes authority, and authority slowly gathers ritual around itself. A skilled surveyor becomes a sacred official. An ancestral leader becomes a culture bringer. Generations later, memory may turn that figure into a god. This possibility remains part of a continuing scholarly debate. Some historians interpret early divine rulers as transformed memories of human chiefs, priests, or regional founders. Others argue that such figures belong entirely to religious imagination. Yale University scholars studying ancient kingship have emphasized how myth and political power often reinforce each other. A king rules the present by claiming connection to a sacred past. The tablet may preserve that sacred past, or it may manufacture one. Its clay could have been shaped centuries after the events it describes. Ancient scribes copied old texts, revised them, combined traditions, and sometimes placed new ideas inside ancient language. A text claiming great age may reveal more about the period of copying than the period it describes. The mystery deepens because the tablet's archaeological context is uncertain. Early excavations did not always record every layer with modern precision. The fragment rests in silence. Beyond the trench, sunlight hardens the earth. A bell calls workers towards shade and water. Brushes are laid down. Baskets stop moving. Yet inside the storage tent, the small tablet seems to hold an older heat, preserved from a landscape that no longer exists. You study the first line again before the great assembly took its seats. The wording suggests not emptiness, but succession. Someone occupied the world before the familiar divine council appeared. Someone maintained boundaries, measured fields, and watched the meeting of waters. Their names may have stood on the missing half. Their cities may have vanished beneath river sediment. Their memory may have survived only as titles copied by a puzzled scribe. Perhaps they were early rulers whose deeds grew mythical with time. Perhaps they were priestly symbols for natural forces. Perhaps they represented forgotten communities absorbed into later kingdoms. It is also possible that the text is poetic invention, designed to give a temple greater antiquity than its rivals. One detail remains difficult to dismiss. The tablet does not describe these earlier powers as enemies defeated by the Anunnaki. It describes them as predecessors. Their authority ends without explanation. Their measured world passes into another system, and the transition occurs inside the broken space where the clay has crumbled away. You remain beside the fragment as evening gathers over the ruins. The sky turns copper, then violet. Cooling air moves through the tent, carrying dust across the tables. Somewhere in the darkness, reeds rustle beside a modern canal. The tablet offers no revelation yet, only a door, and across its threshold lies an age when the gods themselves may have inherited the earth from rulers whose names were already fading. The clay rests beneath a low lamp while 3 scholars lean over separate copies of the signs. Each copy differs slightly, because every damaged wedge invites judgment. One reader sees a divine marker, another sees a broken numeral. A third suspects that the supposed sign is merely a crack formed during burial. The room smells of paper, dust, lamp oil, and damp wool coats. Outside, rain moves softly across the museum windows. Inside, the tablet has become a quiet argument. The first translation begins with confidence. The opening signs seem familiar enough, describing an assembly, a boundary, and an ordered piece of land. Then the line narrows toward a damaged cluster. The wedges are shallow there. One has vanished beneath a patch of mineral staining. Another runs into the broken edge. Together, they appear to form a title, not a personal name, not a known god, not a recognized office. The senior reader copies the signs twice, then turns the page and begins again. He knows the old scribal habits well. Titles often combine ordinary words into sacred formulas. A governor may be called shepherd of the people. A king may become guardian of justice. A priest may carry a title whose literal meaning sounds strange outside its ritual setting. This title resists every comfortable category. Its first element can mean elder, ancient, or one who stands at the beginning. The second may refer to fastening, binding, or holding something in place. The final sign resembles a word for earth, territory, or cultivated ground. Read cautiously. The title becomes something like, "The Ancient One Who Fastens the Land." That translation feels almost reasonable. Almost. The difficulty lies in the grammar. The signs do not follow the expected arrangement for a normal official title. A word appears where a verb should stand. A divine marker may be present, although the surface is uncertain. If that marker is real, the title belongs to a godlike being. If it is not, the phrase might describe a human ruler, a priestly office, or even a ceremonial object. A single wedge changes the world. Records from Mesopotamian scribal schools show that students learned signs through repetition, copying lists of words and titles onto clay exercises. Archaeologists have recovered thousands of such tablets from cities including Nippur and Ur. Many preserve corrections made by teachers. Some students pressed too deeply. Others forgot our signs, reversed them, or squeezed the final lines into whatever space remained. This tablet shows none of that youthful hesitation. Its writing is controlled but deliberately old-fashioned. The scribe seems to imitate a style already distant from his own lifetime. Certain signs carry extra wedges that had fallen from normal use. Others preserve spellings found in ceremonial texts rather than daily accounts. The effect resembles a modern writer using solemn language to make a statement sound older and more authoritative. Yet imitation is not necessarily deception. Temples valued continuity. Priests copied ancient hymns because sacred words gained power through age. Royal courts preserved king lists because political authority seemed stronger when connected to remote beginnings. A scribe might reproduce an archaic title faithfully, even if its original meaning had become obscure. The second scholar proposes another reading. He separates the signs differently, turning the title into First Binder of the Dark Field. The phrase sounds agricultural. Perhaps it refers to the person who marked plots after seasonal flooding. Surveying mattered deeply in river societies because water could erase boundaries overnight. A ruler who restored fields would protect taxation, inheritance, and food supplies. The interpretation fits the landscape. It does not fit the surrounding text. The neighbouring signs describe seats, decrees, and a division of powers. They sound political or cosmic rather than practical. The title seems to belong among rulers, not surveyors. Even so, ancient thought rarely separated administration from religion. Measuring a field could reflect the ordering of creation. Digging a canal could imitate the work of a god. Your eyes follow the lines beneath the lamp. The tablet becomes less like a message and more like a maze. Each turn offers meaning, then withdraws it. The scholars compare lexical lists, temple hymns, royal inscriptions, and school exercises. They search for similar sign combinations. Nothing matches exactly. A third reader notices a tiny spacing gap. Ancient scribes did not use spaces as modern writing does, yet they sometimes left subtle pauses between words. Here, the gap suggests that the title may contain two separate units. The first could mean those of the beginning. The second might be translated as lords of the fixed ground. Now the singular ruler becomes a group. That possibility changes the tone of the inscription. The unknown authority may not be one forgotten king, but a council of beings. They could represent ancestral clans, divine guardians, or regional powers joined beneath one ceremonial name. The damaged grammar suddenly seems less awkward. A peculiar mark appears beside the final sign. It resembles a small boot, although no boot belongs in the sentence. The most practical explanation is that the reed stylus slipped. Another suggestion is that the scribe tested its edge before continuing. Museum conservators have found similar stray impressions on tablets, including fingerprints, fingernail marks, woven matte patterns, and even the tracks of small animals. One famous tablet preserves the paw marks of a wandering creature that crossed the clay while it remained wet. Ancient literature may speak solemnly of kings and gods, yet a curious animal could still interrupt the work. The little mark beside the title feels almost playful. Perhaps the scribe paused there because the phrase troubled him too. Oxford historians of ancient religion have long observed that divine names may shift when traditions travel between languages. A title meaningful in one region can become mysterious when copied elsewhere. Conquerors adopt local gods. Temples merge separate figures. Foreign names are reshaped until they resemble familiar words. The unknown title may preserve such a journey. It could belong to a language spoken in southern Mesopotamia before Sumerian became dominant. It might come from a neighbouring mountain culture. It may represent a ceremonial phrase whose pronunciation was lost, while the written signs remained. In that case, the scribe copied symbols without fully understanding the sounds behind them. The room grows colder as the rain continues. Pages accumulate beside the tablet. Each proposed translation carries a question mark. The scholars write alternatives in the margins, then cross them out. One rendering describes an ancestral ruler. Another suggests a group of boundary gods. A third identifies a priestly council that governed sacred land. The interpretation survived without strain. Among specialists, the open dispute would centre on whether the signs represent a true name, a descriptive title, or a damaged sentence falsely joined by modern readers. Some argue that unusual phrases should be explained through known grammar. Others warn that rigid expectations may erase traditions that do not fit established categories. The safest translation becomes the least satisfying. Those who held the first land, it avoids claims about divinity, kingship, and number. It preserves the basic sense while admitting uncertainty. Yet even this cautious wording raises an uncomfortable possibility. The phrase suggests possession. The land was not empty. It was held, governed, or guarded by someone already present. The Anunnaki title does not appear in the surviving line. Instead, another familiar phrase follows: when the great names had not been called, in Mesopotamian thought naming could establish identity and place within the universe. To say that the great names had not been called may describe a time before the recognized gods received their roles. The unknown title belongs to that silence. You listen to the rain tapping the glass. Somewhere in the museum, a door closes with a dull echo. The tablet remains beneath the lamp, surrounded by dictionaries that cannot fully contain it. Perhaps the title describes forgotten officials whose authority became sacred through memory. Perhaps it belongs to an absorbed people whose language disappeared. Perhaps the scribe invented an ancient order to explain why later gods inherited particular powers. No scholar can place the name because no certain name survives. Only a title remains, balanced between human and divine, singular and collective, remembered and lost. It stands upon damaged clay like a figure seen through dust, holding the first land in a world where the great names have not yet been spoken. The landscape opens beneath a white sun, broad and nearly empty, yet never truly silent. Water moves through reed beds with a low, secretive murmur. Mud cracks along the higher ground. Small birds rise from the marsh, circle once, and disappear into the brightness. You walk where no city bears a familiar name. There is no Ur, no Uruk, no Babylon. No royal wall throws its shadow across the plain. No monumental gate stands painted with lions. The earth is divided by natural channels, shifting pools, and patches of dark soil where families test the uncertain promise of cultivation. Long before recorded history, southern Mesopotamia looks different from the map known today. Geological research has shown that coastlines, river courses, and wetlands changed repeatedly over thousands of years. Sediment carried by the Tigris and Euphrates pushed the land outward. Channels split, wandered, and vanished. Settlements rose beside water, then found themselves stranded when the river moved. Life depends upon adaptation. You feel the heat through the soles of your feet. The ground alternates between dry crust and soft mud. Reeds brush against your arms, smoke drifts from cooking fires, carrying the smell of fish, dates, damp wood, and animal fat. Children move between low huts built from bundled reeds. Dogs sleep beneath woven shades. A narrow boat slides across still water without a sound. The people here do not call themselves ancient. They wake, work, argue, eat, and sleep beneath the same sky that later generations will fill with gods. They know the moods of water. They watch insects, birds, clouds, and the colour of the current. Their survival rests upon details too small for kings to notice and too important for farmers to ignore. A council of elders gathers near a raised platform of packed earth. They speak about a blocked channel. One family wants the water diverted to barley plots. Another fears that opening the bank will flood grazing land. The argument is practical, but beneath it lies the first shape of government. Someone must decide. Archaeological research from the University of Pennsylvania has helped reveal how early communities in Mesopotamia developed long before large states appeared. Excavated houses, storage spaces, tools, and irrigation traces suggest increasingly organized societies. Cooperation became essential as villages grew. Water management required shared labor. Grain storage required trust, oversight, and rules. The first rulers may have emerged from such needs. Not conquerors with bronze weapons, not divine monarchs seated beneath jeweled canopies. Perhaps they were coordinators who remembered seasonal patterns, settled disputes, and directed communal work. Authority might begin with a ditch, a granary, or a raised embankment rather than a throne. The Forgotten Tablet describes land divided before recognized kingship. Its phrasing suggests territories defined by water, reeds, and cultivated edges. No city names survive in the damaged lines. Instead, the text speaks of places through their qualities, the bank where cranes gather, the field beneath bitter wind, the marsh of deep roots, the mound that remains dry. These sound less like kingdoms and more like remembered landscapes. A curious phrase describes one settlement as the place where the ground drinks slowly. The expression may refer to soil that absorbed floodwater without collapsing. It might describe a sacred basin. It could also be poetic language invented by a later scribe who imagined an ancestral world through agricultural metaphors. The wording feels intimate. You kneel beside a field no larger than a garden. Men and women press seeds into damp earth. Using simple tools of wood and stone, their movements are patient. Every gesture has been learned through failure. Too much water rots the crop. Too little hardens the soil. Planting too early invites loss. Planting too late risks the burning heat. A fringe theory occasionally suggests that sudden agricultural development required instruction from an advanced lost civilization. The evidence does not support such certainty. Farming emerged through long experimentation across many regions, yet the theory survives because ancient progress can look astonishing when compressed into a few textbook lines. In reality, generations carried the knowledge. A grandmother notices which seeds endure salt. A child remembers where the fish gather during low water. A family learns to reinforce a wall with woven reeds. A village discovers that cooperation turns dangerous flooding into useful irrigation. Nothing arrives in one miraculous moment. Still, memory often prefers teachers. Later stories may transform practical ancestors into supernatural benefactors. A person who introduced a new crop becomes the giver of agriculture. A leader who organized canals becomes master of rivers. A healer becomes patron of life. The slow achievements of many people gather around a single sacred figure. This may explain the rulers described in the tablet. They appear without personal names, identified by functions tied to land and survival. One watches the deep channel. Another guards the raised soil. A third oversees the meeting place of fresh and bitter water. These roles sound almost bureaucratic, though wrapped in ancient mystery. Perhaps the oldest gods were job descriptions remembered too long. The thought carries a trace of gentle absurdity. Humanity may have spent millennia transforming exhausted administrators into immortal beings. Somewhere, an official who once complained about damaged canal gates could have become lord of cosmic boundaries. Yet the possibility is not entirely humorous. Power grows through repetition. When a leader controls water, food, and labor, obedience acquires ritual weight. Decisions may be announced at dawn, witnessed by elders, sealed with offerings, and remembered through formula. Children grow up hearing that the order of fields reflects the order of heaven. Gradually, administration becomes sacred. A debate continues among historians about how early political authority formed in prehistoric Mesopotamia. Some emphasize cooperation and collective management. Others point toward competition, inequality, and control of surplus food. Both forces may have operated together. Communities can cooperate within themselves while competing fiercely with neighbors. The plane encourages both unity and rivalry. Water connects settlements, but it also divides them. A canal opened upstream can deprive fields downstream. Grazing animals damage planted land. Fishing grounds become contested. A family with larger stores can survive poor seasons and gain influence over those who cannot. The first boundaries. They are not stone walls. They may be reed markers, ditches, remembered trees, or agreements spoken before witnesses. Yet once a boundary exists, someone must defend it. Once a field belongs to one group, another group becomes an outsider. The landscape begins to carry ownership. The tablet's phrase, "those who held the first land," now feels less abstract. Holding land may mean maintaining it against flood and drought. It may mean claiming it from neighboring communities. It may mean controlling the labor that made cultivation possible. The rulers could have been guardians, managers, or masters. The distinction is difficult. Evening settles over the marsh. Heat lifts slowly from the ground. Frogs begin calling among the reeds. Smoke thickens above the settlement as food is prepared. A woman pours water into a clay vessel. An old man checks the woven barrier beside the channel. Two children chase each other along the bank until someone calls them home. Nothing here looks like the beginning of empire. That is precisely why it matters. Dynasties do not rise from emptiness. Kingship does not descend upon untouched ground. Monumental civilization grows from countless small agreements, repeated tasks, inherited fears, and practical solutions. The world of named cities emerges from communities whose own names may never be recovered. The forgotten landscape remains beneath everything. Under later temples lie older houses. Beneath royal roads rest abandoned channels. Below written history, generations move through mud, reeds, heat, and seasonal water. Their rulers may have carried no crowns. Their laws may have existed only in memory. Their gods may have been inseparable from weather, soil, and survival. You watch the final light fade across the plain. The settlements become dark shapes beside silver water. No inscription marks their existence. No king list records their leaders. Yet somewhere within these unnamed communities, authority is taking form. It is quiet. It is local. And it is already learning how to endure. A low drum sounds across the settlement while dawn gathers above the eastern marsh. The rhythm is slow, measured, and practical. It does not summon warriors or celebrate a king. It tells workers when to gather beside the canal. You hear sandals pressing into damp ground. Wooden tools knock against shoulders. Baskets creak. A faint smell of smoke lingers over the houses, mixed with river water, clay, and crushed reeds. Near the central platform, 4 officials wait beneath a woven canopy. Each carries a different object. One holds a measuring cord, another carries a polished staff. A third keeps a basket of clay. The fourth bears a shallow bowl filled with dark water. They are not dressed like gods. Their clothing is simple, though cleaner than most. Their authority appears through posture, position, and the careful silence surrounding them. Families approach in small groups, waiting to hear how labor will be divided. The canal has narrowed during the dry season. Mud has collected near the southern bend, water no longer reaches several fields, and salt has begun whitening the soil. The officials must decide who digs, who provides food, and which plots receive the first restored flow. This is governance at its most elemental. Archaeological records from early Mesopotamian settlements confirm that irrigation required coordinated labor across households. Channels needed clearing, banks needed strengthening, and water had to be distributed among competing fields. Such work could not depend entirely upon private effort. Communities needed schedules, agreements, and people trusted to enforce them. The keepers described on the Forgotten Tablet seem to belong to this kind of world. They are presented through responsibilities rather than personal histories. One governs flowing water. One guards cultivated earth. One oversees stored grain. One watches the calendar of winds, stars, and seasonal change. Together, they resemble a system of offices, yet the language surrounding them is ceremonial. The keeper of water does not simply open channels. He is said to release the silver path. The guardian of fields does not mark boundaries. She holds the sleeping earth in its proper shape. The keeper of stores counts the breath of the people. The watcher of seasons listens where the sky touches the reeds. Practical duties become sacred images. You follow the workers toward the canal. The sun rises behind thin clouds, turning the marsh into pale bronze. Men cut into packed mud with wooden blades tipped by stone. Women carry baskets of sediment toward the bank. Children gather fallen reeds and chase away animals searching for food. The keeper of water stands near a wooden marker driven into the channel bed. He checks the depth using a cord knotted at regular intervals. His decision determines when the barrier will be opened. No prayer is spoken yet. Still, everyone watches him. Knowledge gives his gestures weight. He understands the current, the slope of the channel, and the likely direction of the flow. Experience has taught him how quickly water can destroy what people spent weeks building. To the community, this knowledge may seem inherited from ancestors, granted by spirits, or taught through dreams. A practical expert can easily become a sacred figure. The tablet names 4 keepers, though one passage may imply more. Damage obscures several signs, leaving scholars uncertain whether the list once included 6, 7, or perhaps 9 offices. The surviving pattern suggests that each keeper controlled a domain essential to survival. Water, soil, food, time, these are not abstract concern, they are the foundations of settled life. A council decree from later Mesopotamian cities proves that officials continued regulating canals, labour, and agricultural obligations long after kingdoms emerged. Such documents list responsibilities with remarkable precision. Workers were assigned by the household. Neglect could bring fines. Disputes over water reach temple administrators and judges. The forgotten system may represent an earlier memory of similar authority. You enter a storage house built on raised ground. The air feels cooler inside. Rows of clay jars stand against the walls. Baskets hold barley, lentils, dried fish, and dates. A clerk kneels beside a low table, moving small tokens into groups. Each token represents a quantity. One shape may stand for grain, another may indicate livestock, a third might identify a household, before full writing developed. Communities across the ancient Near East used clay counters to record goods. Researchers at Harvard University and other major institutions have studied these objects as steps toward administrative notation. Counting changes relationships. Food stored for everyone requires decisions about contribution and distribution. A poor harvest forces difficult choices. A family with many children may need more grain. A household that failed to work may still demand a share. Compassion, punishment, and survival begin gathering around the same jars. The keeper of stores sits beside the clerk. Her duty is described on the tablet through a curious phrase: she closes the mouth of hunger. It sounds compassionate, almost maternal. Yet another line states that no basket leaves without her mark. Mercy and control occupy the same room. A strange tidbit appears in later administrative tablets, where scribes recorded tiny amounts of beer issued as rations. Beer was not merely a pleasure, it provided calories, nutrition, and safer liquid in some settings. Workers could receive measured portions according to status and labour. Even sacred economies needed careful beverage management. You can almost imagine the keeper of stores defending the ration list while an impatient worker argues that his cup looks suspiciously shallow. Ancient bureaucracy probably included the same weary glances found in offices everywhere. Outside, the guardian of fields walks the boundary paths. She carries a staff marked with intervals. The path beneath her feet is narrow. Bordered by young barley, she checks drainage ditches, broken markers, and signs of grazing animals. 2 families wait near a disputed corner where a reed fence has shifted. No written deed settles the matter. Memory does. Witnesses describe where the boundary stood during the previous flood. An elder recalls a tree that no longer exists. A child insists that goats crossed from the other side, which is not legally useful but is delivered with admirable certainty. The guardian listens. Her decision preserves peace for the moment, yet every judgment adds to her authority. Over years, her office becomes associated with fairness, fertility, and protection. Stories may claim that crops grow well beneath her blessing. A generation later, people may remember the office more clearly than the person. The title survives. The individual disappears. This transformation remains open to debate among historians of religion. Some scholars view early deities as personified natural forces, others emphasize ancestors. Political offices and social institutions, many argue that no single explanation fits every case. Gods can emerge through several processes at once, combining weather, memory, authority, and ritual. The keepers may stand at that intersection. The Watcher of Seasons carries no tool except a polished wooden tablet marked with notches. At sunset, he climbs a raised mound and studies the horizon. He watches where certain stars appear. He notices the return of birds, the changing wind, and the height of water against stone. His observation guide planting and harvesting. They also shape ceremony. When the first star appears at the expected place, workers prepare the fields. When the moon reaches a particular form, offerings are placed beside the canal. The community does not separate astronomy, agriculture, and religion. All belong to one pattern of survival. The Watcher is not predicting a distant future, he is protecting the present. The four keepers meet at night beneath the canopy. Oil lamps flicker beside bowls of grain and water. Their objects are placed in a circle. The cord, staff, tokens, and mark tablet form a symbolic arrangement. The tablet calls this gathering the setting of the First Order. No crown appears, no throne is mentioned. Authority exists as balance among functions. Water must not overwhelm soil. Grain must not be hoarded beyond need. Time must guide labour. Boundaries must prevent conflict without destroying cooperation. Perhaps the system worked only in memory. Perhaps it never existed exactly as described. A later scribe may have imagined an ideal past when every power held its proper place. Ancient societies often looked backward toward lost balance, especially during periods of disorder. The First Order may be history. It may be philosophy. It may be longing. You stand near the canal as darkness deepens. Frogs call from the reeds. Lamps glow inside the houses. The newly cleared water moves slowly towards the fields, carrying moonlight across its surface. No single room commands the settlement. Instead, responsibility is divided among keepers whose offices touch every part of life. They manage the forces that later civilizations will place beneath divine names. Water, earth, food, and time. The people depend upon them. The keepers depend upon one another. And somewhere within that fragile arrangement, sacred authority begins to take shape. Cold stone presses against your palm as you enter a chamber beneath the oldest platform. The air carries the scent of wet clay, lamp smoke, and mineral dust. A narrow stair descends into darkness, each step worn smooth by feet whose names have vanished. At the bottom stands a seat. It is not large. It bears no gold, ivory, or carved animals. The back rises only slightly above the floor. Shaped from packed earth and strengthened with reed matting, a shallow basin rests beside it. 3 sockets in the wall may once have held wooden poles, ceremonial staffs, or hanging lamps. The chamber feels less like a royal hall than a hidden room for decisions. Yet the tablet calls the seat a throne. The term appears in a line describing a time when heaven had not yet assigned power to the recognized gods. The ruler seated there is not named as king. No crown is mentioned. No army surrounds the chamber. The authority seems older, quieter, and rooted in the ground itself. The inscription states that the throne was established before the sky received its stations. Such language does not require a literal age before stars existed. Ancient texts often describe political change through cosmic imagery. A new temple might not represent the founding of order. A ruler's accession could be compared with sunrise. A destroyed city might be portrayed as a world returned to darkness. Still, the order of events remains curious. Earthly authority comes first. Heavenly hierarchy comes later. You step closer to the earthen seat. Fine cracks run along its surface. A faint red pigment survives near the base. barely visible beneath soot. Someone once renewed that color carefully, perhaps during seasonal ceremonies. The throne may have represented blood, fertile soil, fire, or simple prestige. An offering bowl lies near the right side. Inside it, archaeologists find traces of burned grain and animal fat. Laboratory analysis of similar residues from ancient ceremonial spaces has helped researchers reconstruct offerings, cooking practices, and ritual meals. Studies connected with institutions such as Stanford University have shown how microscopic plant remains can reveal activities invisible to ordinary excavation. The bowl suggests that the seat received food, whether the food was intended for a living ruler, a dead ancestor, or an unseen power remains uncertain. Ancient ceremonies often blurred those categories. A leader might sit where an ancestor once sat. A priest might speak with the voice of a deity. A vacant throne could represent someone absent but still sovereign. The chamber allows several possibilities. Perhaps the earliest ruler was human. Sure, ruler was human. Perhaps the throne later became sacred. Perhaps no person sat there at all. A narrow channel runs beneath the seat and disappears into the wall. During certain seasons, water may have flowed through it from a nearby basin. The sound would have filled the chamber with a soft underground murmur. Anyone seated above that hidden stream would seem connected to the depths below. Water beneath authority, earth around authority, above authority. The arrangement feels deliberate. The tablet describes the throne as the root from which command rises. The metaphor suggests that rule grows upward from the land rather than descending from the heavens. Later traditions often explain kingship as a gift bestowed by gods. Here, command appears to emerge from soil, water, ancestry, and possession. The ruler belongs to the earth before belonging to the sky. A mainstream historical fact supports the importance of elevated seats in ancient political ritual. Reliefs, cylinder seals, and temple scenes from Mesopotamia frequently show rulers or deities seated while others stand before them. The seated position expresses stability, judgment, and control. To sit while others approach is already a language of power. This chamber may preserve an earlier version of that language. The throne is low because authority has not yet become monumental. There is no need to raise the ruler high above the community. The chamber itself provides separation. Only selected people can descend. Darkness creates distance. Restricted access turns an ordinary seat into a place of mystery. A small groove crosses the floor from the stair toward the throne. It may have held a cord guiding ceremonial movement. It may mark repeated dragging of a wooden object. One fringe suggestion claims that such grooves reveal primitive mechanical devices used to create supernatural effects. Hidden channels, resonating walls, and concealed lamps could certainly shape an audience's experience. Ancient ritual specialists understood atmosphere. They knew how darkness changes sound. They knew that smoke hides movement. They knew water could make a chamber seem alive. None of this requires secret technology, but it does show that sacred authority was carefully staged. A ruler enters through shadow. A lamp glows beneath the sea. Water murmurs below. The community hears a voice from darkness. That is enough! The tablet gives the throne 3 functions. It receives petitions, confirms boundaries, and assigns sacred duties. These are political acts, yet each carries ritual weight. A petition is not merely heard, it is placed beneath the root. A boundary is not merely approved, it is fastened to the breath of the land. A duty is not merely assigned, it is given a name before the watchers. The seat transforms decisions into permanent order. You imagine a family entering the chamber during a dispute. They bring clay markers, woven cords, and witnesses. The ruler listens from the throne while a scribe kneels nearby. No written law code hangs on the wall. Judgment depends upon the memory, custom, and the authority of place. Once spoken from the throne, the decision becomes more than opinion. It becomes part of the world's arrangement. The power of such a chamber may explain why later temples were built above earlier sacred rooms. Construction upon an ancient foundation did not merely save labour, it claimed continuity. A new priesthood could say that its god had always occupied the place. A new ruler could sit where forgotten authorities once judged. The throne survives through replacement. Its meaning changes. Its claim remains. Scholars continue to debate whether the earliest ceremonial seats belong to chiefs, priests, councils, or symbolic ancestors. Evidence varies from site to site. Some buildings suggest collective ritual, others reveal growing inequality and restricted access. The emergence of kingship probably differed across regions and centuries. No single throne explains every society. This one, however, seems designed to make authority feel older than any living person. A phrase near the damaged edge calls the ruler the one who sits while generations pass. That description may refer to an office rather than an individual. People die, but the seat remains. Each new occupant becomes part of the same identity. The throne is the ruler, the person merely fills it. This idea appears in many later political traditions. Crowns, seats, titles, and palaces outlive their holders. Authority attaches itself to symbols. A weak person may seem powerful upon the proper throne. A strong person without recognized symbols may remain a rebel. Here, the symbolism is still close to the earth. The ruler sits above water and clay. Offerings gather at the feet. Boundaries are confirmed within the chamber. Seasonal duties are assigned beside the basin. The throne links government with fertility, memory, and the unseen depths. Heaven has not yet taken control. The stars may guide time, but they do not grant the seat. The recognized divine council has not yet claimed the language of kingship. Authority rises from a chamber beneath the settlement, shaped by human hands and older customs. Perhaps later priests reversed the direction. Perhaps they taught that power descended from heaven, because heavenly approval strengthened earthly rule. A king chosen by gods faces fewer questions than a leader chosen by neighbors. Divine origin turns politics into destiny. The tablet preserves another arrangement. The throne comes first. The gods inherit its language. You sit at the edge of the chamber while the lamp burns lower. Shadows gather around the walls. The hidden channel continues its patient murmur beneath the floor. Somewhere above, footsteps cross the platform, faint and distant. The seat remains empty, yet the room does not feel abandoned. It feels occupied by memory. Perhaps the oldest ruler was never a single being. Perhaps authority belonged to the throne, the chamber, and the land surrounding them. People may have served the office because they believed order itself resided there. The sky would later receive its gods. The temples would later receive their names. But deep beneath those arrangements, an earthen seat waits in darkness, holding a form of rule that claims no heavenly permission. A stone marker rises from the plain beneath a sky washed pale by heat. Its surface is smooth except for 7 shallow circles arranged around a central groove. No figure is carved there. No king stands with weapon raised. No god receives worshippers beneath a horned crown. Only 7 marks remain. You approach across hard ground where thorn bushes lean into the wind. The air tastes faintly of salt. In the distance, separate settlements appear as low brown shapes, each surrounded by fields, canals, grazing land, and burial mounds. They do not form one kingdom. They belong to 7 distinct domains. The tablet describes them as the first divisions of the inhabited earth. Each domain is connected to a natural condition. One belongs to deep water, another belongs to rising ground. A third follows the path of seasonal wind, one guards fertile darkness, where river mud settles thickly, another watches dry grazing land. The 6th controls crossings between channels, the 7th remains difficult to understand. Its sign can mean silence. It can also mean absence. This seventh territory may have been uninhabited, sacred, forbidden, or simply lost from the surviving text. The uncertainty gives it a strange weight. 6 domains appear through duties and resources. The final one is defined by what cannot be heard. You place your hand near the carved circles. Stone holds the day's warmth. Fine sand has collected inside each hollow. The central groove runs downward, perhaps allowing water, oil, or bloodless offerings of grain to flow across the surface during ceremony. The arrangement suggests unity without sameness. 7 regions surround one center, yet none appears subordinate. Each possesses its own keeper, seasonal rites, and form of labor. The domains meet through agreement, exchange, and shared measurement rather than conquest. Researchers studying early settlement patterns at the University of Chicago have shown that ancient Mesopotamian communities often developed within networks. Villages exchanged stone, timber, metals, shells, food, and crafted goods across long distances. No settlement possessed every resource. Cooperation and trade connected regions even when political unity did not exist. The 7 domains may preserve a memory of such a network. Boats move between them along waterways. Herds cross dry corridors. Families carry woven cloth, fish oil, grain, clay vessels, and reeds. Messengers travel with sealed tokens that identify their place of origin. A domain's strength depends upon what it controls and what it lacks. The deepwater territory provides fish, reeds, and access to distant marshes. Its people build narrow boats and know hidden channels where strangers become lost. Their keeper wears a belt decorated with shells. During ceremonies, water is poured across a black stone to represent the movement of life. The high ground domain protects storage houses from flood. Its people maintain raised platforms and watch roads crossing the plain. Their keeper carries a staff cut from imported wood, an object rare enough to signal authority. Grain from several settlements may be stored there during dangerous seasons. The wind domain occupies open land where dust travels without obstruction. Shepherds follow grazing routes through this territory. They read weather through clouds, animal behavior, and the smell of distant rain. Their keeper oversees movement rather than fixed property. The dark soil domain grows barley, lentils, onions, and dates. Its fields depend upon rich sediment left by water. Workers there understand drainage, salt, and the exhausting patience of cultivation. Their keeper controls planting dates and communal labor. The dry domain supports goats, sheep, and hardy plants. Its people exchange wool, hides, milk, and meat for grain. They know wells hidden beneath stony ground. Their keeper settles disputes over pasture and migration. The crossing domain governs bridges, ferries, and narrow passages between channels. Traders must pass through its territory. So must raiders. Its keeper holds power through movement, tolls, and information. Then comes silence. The tablet names no crop, herd, waterway, or craft for the 7th domain. It describes no keeper's object. A broken phrase mentions a closed gate and a field where footsteps are not counted. The place may have been reserved for the dead. That interpretation remains speculative. Ancient societies often organized landscapes through symbolic numbers. 7 later became important across Mesopotamian religion, appearing in groups of sages, demons, gates, judges, and celestial bodies. The number may represent completeness rather than an exact political map. Yet the tablet's descriptions feel practical enough to suggest real geography. A fringe idea claims that the 7 circles correspond to hidden planetary colonies or forgotten continents. Such claims travel quickly because 7 invites cosmic interpretation. However, the stone marker and tablet speak more clearly about land, labor, movement, and resources. The mystery does not require distant worlds. Human geography is strange enough. At midday, representatives from 6 domains gather near the central marker. The seventh place remains empty. Each person brings a small object from their territory, a shell, a grain measure, a tuft of wool, a lump of dark soil, a strip of dried fish, a carved fairy token. They place the objects around the ceremony confirms obligations between regions. Each domain promises something the others need. Water routes remain open, grazing boundaries are respected. Grain reserves are shared during scarcity, crossings are protected, disputes are judged through common measures. No king presides. A recorder walks around the marker, pressing symbols into wet clay. Another official checks chords marked with standard lengths. The system depends upon agreement that measurements mean the same thing everywhere. A basket must hold a recognized amount. A field must be measured through accepted units. A toll must not change according to personal mood. A boundary must be witnessed. Standardization creates trust, but it also creates control. The tablet calls this arrangement the binding of the seven. The phrase does not describe chains. It describes a network held together through shared rules. Each territory remains distinct, yet all accept the central measure. The central groove may symbolize that standard. Water poured at the top divides toward the seven circles, touching each equally. During drought, the ritual reminds leaders that survival depends upon balance. During abundance, it warns against hoarding. The ceremony turns administration into moral order. Records from later Mesopotamian cities confirm that standardized weights and measures became essential for trade and taxation. Stone weights, marked vessels, and written accounts helped officials compare goods across regions. Scholars at Yale University have examined how such systems supported expanding institutions and made economic activity visible to authorities. Measurement can protect fairness. It can also reveal who owes what. The seven-domain system contains both possibilities. A merchant approaching the crossing territory has his cargo weighed. The official compares his stone weights with those kept at the central sanctuary. A small difference appears. The merchant insists that humidity has affected the grain. The official remains unconvinced. Ancient commerce, like modern commerce, produces remarkable creativity when payment becomes due. The dispute is settled by reweighing the cargo 3 times. One basket is removed as tax. The merchant leaves muttering beneath his breath. Such ordinary tensions prevent the system from becoming an ideal fantasy. Agreements require enforcement. Standards create winners and losers. Domains with valuable crossings may gain influence. Regions controlling grain may demand greater authority during shortages. Equality becomes fragile. The open scholarly debate concerns whether early regional systems were genuinely cooperative or already dominated by powerful centers. Some archaeologists emphasize shared ritual and mutual dependence. Others see evidence that larger settlements gradually controlled smaller communities through storage, trade, and religious authority. The seven domains may begin as partners. They may not remain so. The silent territory complicates everything. If it represents the dead, its empty place gives ancestors a role in political decisions. Agreements are witnessed not only by the living, but by those believed to remain beneath the ground. If it represents wilderness, then the empty circle marks land beyond control. The system acknowledges a region where no ruler's measure applies. Such humility would be unusual, though not impossible. If it represents a destroyed domain, the silence becomes a warning. A drought, flood, epidemic, or conflict may have emptied its settlements. The other 6 preserve its place, so no one forgets that a domain can vanish. Its empty seat reminds every keeper that order is temporary. Evening lowers gently across the central plain. Representatives gather their objects. Messengers prepare for long journeys home. The stone marker darkens as heat leaves its surface. 7 circles remain around the central groove. 6 contain traces of offerings. 1 holds only dust. The system appears complete because absence has been given a place. Land, water, animals, crops, roads, and human agreement form the visible structure. Silence forms its boundary. You stand beside the marker as stars emerge above the plain. No single ruler commands the 7 domains, yet every domain depends upon the same measures, the same gatherings, and the same memory of a territory that no longer answers. The mountains rise beyond the northern horizon, like a dark wall beneath the morning sky. Their upper slopes remain hidden by cloud. Lower ridges descend into broken valleys, where pine, oak, and scrub cling to stone. The air carries the scent of wet earth, resin, and cold water. You leave the open plain and enter a narrower world. Paths twist between cliffs. Streams strike against rock. Hooves slide on loose gravel. Every turn hides the next mile, and every valley seems capable of holding a people unknown to those living beyond the foothills. The tablet calls this region the place beneath the mountain. Its wording is careful. It does not say the rulers lived upon the peaks. It says they emerged from below them, through gates of stone and valleys where the sun arrived late, to a scribe from the southern lowlands. Such geography would feel distant, secretive, and slightly unreal. The mountain supplied materials the plains could not provide. Mesopotamia possessed fertile soil, reeds, fish, clay, and abundant sunlight, but it lacked good timber, building stone, and most metal ores. Archaeological records confirm that ancient communities imported these resources from upland regions. Copper, obsidian, hardwood, and stone traveled through trade routes crossing difficult terrain. Dependence creates curiosity. It also creates fear. A caravan descends through a narrow pass. Donkeys carry baskets of dark stone, polished tools, copper ore, and blocks of timber strapped across their backs. The traders wear thicker clothing than people of the marshes. Their speech sounds unfamiliar. Their skin bears the dust of long travel. At the edge of the plain, local officials examine the cargo. The mountain visitors understand routes that lowland farmers do not. They know hidden springs, winter passes, and valleys where storms gather without warning. They can disappear into terrain that flatland armies find difficult to enter. Their knowledge gives them an aura of independence. Stories grow around such people. The tablet describes a group called the Ones of the Deep Ridge. The phrase may refer to inhabitants of enclosed valleys. It may also carry a symbolic meaning connected with burial caves or the hidden interior of the earth. Several signs remain damaged, leaving the exact interpretation uncertain. The surviving lines portray them as keepers of fire trapped inside stone. That image likely refers to metal, copper, or looks unimpressive when first removed from the ground. Through heat, charcoal, and skilled control, become something brighter and more useful. To communities unfamiliar with smelting, the transformation may seem magical. Stone enters the furnace, metal emerges. The mountain people know the secret. You stand inside a workshop built against a slope. Charcoal smoke gathers beneath the roof. Workers feed a furnace through narrow openings while another person pumps air using leather bellows. The heat presses against your face. Sparks rise into the darkness. A greenish stone breaks apart inside the fire. Hours later, a small mass of copper glows at the bottom. This process requires experience. Too little heat leaves the ore unchanged. Too much air may spoil the result. The correct fuel, furnace shape, and timing must be learned through repeated trial. Such knowledge could pass within families or specialist groups who guarded their methods carefully. The tablet gives these workers a ceremonial title. It calls them those who wake the red spirit. The phrase sounds supernatural, yet it may describe metallurgy through poetic language. Ancient societies often treated transformation as sacred. Potters turned mud into durable vessels. Brewers turned grain into drink. Metal workers drew shining material from stone. Each craft altered nature. Metalwork altered power. Copper tools cut wood more effectively than stone. Copper ornaments signaled status. Weapons made from metal could intimidate rivals. Control over mines and smelting created new forms of wealth. The ones beneath the mountains may have gained authority through this control. A fringe theory claims that early metalworkers were remembered as non-human beings because they worked near fire, lived apart, and possessed secret knowledge. The claim cannot be proven, but the social pattern is plausible. Specialist communities often seem mysterious to outsiders, especially when their work involves danger and guarded techniques. Darkens their faces, fire scars their hands, their furnaces glow at night. Stories do the rest. One passage on the tablet describes the mountain rulers wearing faces of black stone. This might refer to masks made from obsidian, a volcanic glass valued across the ancient Near East. Obsidian can be polished until it reflects light like dark water. It also fractures into edges sharper than many early metal tools. Researchers at the University of California have traced obsidian artifacts to specific volcanic sources by studying their chemical composition. Such work shows that prehistoric trade networks stretched across remarkable distances. A blade found far south could originate from mountains hundreds of miles away. The tablet's black faces may therefore symbolize trade authority. A leader wearing polished obsidian would display access to rare material. The mask could identify an office, intimidate visitors, or represent an ancestral power connected with the mountains. Its reflective surface might appear almost alive beside firelight. You enter a stone chamber above the workshop. Masks hang along the wall, though only 3 remain complete. Each has narrow openings for their eyes. Their surfaces reflect the lamp flame in broken points. No names accompany them. The chamber's floor slopes toward a pit filled with ash. Animal bones, fragments of copper, and burnt seeds lie within it. The objects suggest ritual meals, craft offerings, or ceremonies connected with production. Metalworking may have taken place under rules that combined practical skill with sacred obligation. An open scholarly debate concerns how much early craft specialization created separate social classes. Some historians argue that specialist workers remained embedded within ordinary households. Others believe control of rare skills and materials helped produce stronger elites. Evidence varies across regions and periods. The mountain rulers may have been chiefs, they may have been guild leaders, they may have been ritual specialists whose authority came from controlling dangerous knowledge. The tablet offers another possibility. It states that the ones of the Deep Ridge arrived when the lowlands suffered a season without wood. Their caravans brought beams for roofs, charcoal for kilns, and stone for ceremonial foundations. In return, they received grain, wool, oil, and fish products. This exchange may have created political influence. A community needing timber cannot easily threaten the people who supply it. A temple requiring imported stone depends upon distant routes. Trade becomes diplomacy, and diplomacy becomes authority. The mountain leaders may not rule through conquest. They may rule through necessity. One line calls them judges of the upper roads. The title suggests they controlled passes linking regions. Travelers crossing those routes would pay tribute, request protection, or seek permission. The highlands could regulate movement between separate worlds. The lowlands provide food. The mountains provide materials. The roads decide whether either side receives what it needs. The people of the plain would imagine those roads through rumor. A trader tells of a valley where voices echo for minutes. Another describes a cave filled with red crystals. Someone claims the mountain rulers sleep inside stone chambers and emerge only during winter. Every journey adds another layer. A quirky detail appears in later travel accounts from the ancient Near East. Writers sometimes describe distant peoples through their unusual clothing, diets, or hairstyles rather than their politics. A shepherd wearing a pointed cap could become an exotic figure in foreign imagination. Distance turns ordinary customs into signs of mystery. The tablet may perform the same transformation. The ones beneath the mountains are described as broad-shouldered, silent, and covered in wool, They may simply wear heavy cloaks suited to cold valleys. To a southern scribe accustomed to linen and heat, such clothing would appear strange. Their silence may reflect language difference. Their hidden homes may be ordinary stone villages. There may be metallurgy, yet the text places them among the earlier rulers. They do not enter as invaders. They appear as custodians of roots, materials, and subterranean knowledge. Their authority belongs to a world connected by exchange, where no region survives alone. You follow a caravan descending toward evening. Bells ring softly from the animals' harnesses. Timber creaks beneath rope bindings. Copper ore glitters where a basket has torn. The traders move carefully along the cliff edge while cloud gathers above the peaks. Behind them, smoke rises from hidden workshops. Ahead, the plain waits for wood, stone, and metal. The mountain rulers remain difficult to define because their power does not fit a throne. They control movement, transformation, and access. Their world begins where fields end and stone closes around the path. The tablet leaves their origin uncertain. It says only that they came through the deep gates when the roads were first opened. Perhaps those gates were mountain passes. Perhaps they were mines. Perhaps they were remembered as entrances to an older world beneath the earth. Mist lies low across the fields while workers gather beside a narrow canal. Their feet sink into cool mud. Reed baskets rest against their hips. Wooden hoes lean against shoulders polished by years of use. A horn sounds once from the storage yard. The day begins. You move with the workers toward the eastern plots, where barley shoots rise in orderly rows. Water glitters between the furrows. The scent of damp soil mixes with crushed herbs, sweat, smoke, and the sour remains of yesterday's beer. No chains appear. No guards raise weapons. Yet every person knows where to stand. The tablet describes humanity through labor, before it describes humanity through ancestry. People are counted according to fields, workshops, canals, herds, and storehouses. Their identity seems connected with what they provide to the order governing the land. The wording is unsettlingly direct. Humans are called those who carry the earth's burden. Another phrase describes them as hands placed beneath the measure. These expressions may sound like claims of literal creation for servitude. They may also reflect the language of later institutions, where scribes viewed society through obligations. A person entered official records because grain was owed, labor was assigned, or rations were distributed. Administration notices function before individuality. Researchers at the University of Pennsylvania have examined thousands of ancient economic tablets recording workers, food allowances, livestock, and manufactured goods. Such records reveal complex systems of dependent labor. Some workers served temples or palaces permanently. Others completed seasonal duties required from households. The categories were not all identical. A field laborer might receive grain, oil, wool, and beer. A craft worker might belong to a supervised workshop. A prisoner could be assigned demanding tasks. A free household might still owe several weeks of communal service each year. The tablet compresses these differences into one purpose. Human beings work so the ordered world continues. You reach a canal gate constructed from timber, reeds, and packed clay. Two teams wait on opposite banks. One removes mud from the channel. Another repairs the retaining wall. An overseer checks each household name against marks pressed into a clay list. The list contains no stories. It records attendant. A man whose child is sick asks to leave before midday. The overseer hesitates, then moves his name to another work period. A widow sends an older daughter in place of an injured relative. Two brothers argue about whose family supplied baskets during the previous month. The system appears rigid until daily life bends it. Labor must continue, but people remain human inside the structure. They bargain, complain, help neighbors, and occasionally disappear when the work becomes especially unpleasant. Ancient administrators, judging by surviving complaints, discovered that workers could become mysteriously unavailable with impressive regularity. One quirky text from Mesopotamia records excuses involving illness, family duties, and the preparation of beer. Whether every explanation was entirely honest remains beyond archaeology. Bureaucratic creativity has what it roots. The tablet presents a more solemn account. It states that the first workers were shaped from river clay, mixed with the breath of those who ruled. This image resembles creation traditions found across Mesopotamian literature, where humanity emerges from earth combined with a divine element. Clay provides a natural metaphor. It begins formless, it accepts pressure, it hardens into purpose. A potter kneels near the workers' settlement, turning a vessel beneath wet fingers. The spinning clay rises slowly. A slight pressure narrows the neck. Another widens the body. The potter chooses what the vessel will hold before the vessel can choose anything at all. The tablet uses similar imagery for people. They are formed to contain effort. The idea may reflect how ruling institutions imagined labouring populations. Priests and officials organised society by assigning roles. Farmers, herders, builders, brewers, weavers, and boatmen became parts within a larger sacred economy. Each person had a place. Each place carried duty. The text describes the earliest workers receiving 4 tools: a digging blade, a carrying basket, a measuring cord, and a cup. The first 3 clearly belong to labour. The 4th is more ambiguous. The cup may represent rations. It may symbolise participation in ritual meals. It may also suggest that workers received nourishment in return for service. Ancient labour systems were exploitative in many cases, but they were not always based upon simple violence. Institutions maintained workers because temples, canals, herds, and workshops depended upon their survival. A hungry labour force does not build durable walls. The cup therefore carries 2 meanings. It sustains, it controls. Rations bind workers to the storehouse. A family dependent upon official grain cannot easily leave. Distribution becomes authority expressed through measured generosity. The tablet says the cup was filled only when the day's shadow reached the western marker. Time itself regulates hunger. You feel the afternoon heat settle across the fields. Shoulders ache beneath loaded baskets. Mud dries along your legs. The sound of insects becomes constant. Above the embankment, the overseer watches the sun approach a marked post. When the shadow touches it, work stops. Workers gather beneath reed shelters. Grain cakes are passed from baskets. Clay jars contain weak beer flavoured with dates or herbs. Conversation rises slowly as exhaustion loosens the day's course. The meal is communal, but portions differ. Senior workers receive larger cups, specialists receive extra oil, children receive smaller bread cakes. Status appears through quantity. Harvard University scholars studying ancient food distribution have noted that ration lists can reveal hierarchy with unusual clarity. Titles may exaggerate equality, but measured portions show who received more. The tablet avoids these differences. It presents humanity as one body serving the land. That unity may be theological rather than social. Myths often reduce complicated populations into a single category. Humanity works, the rulers direct, the world remains stable. A fringe interpretation claims that the clay mixture describes deliberate biological engineering by non-human beings. The text does not offer scientific detail supporting such a claim. His language belongs to ritual poetry where breath, clay, blood, and divine intention explain life symbolically. Still, the engineering interpretation persists because the story frames human purpose before human freedom. People are made for a task. That idea feels uncomfortable even without unusual technology. Ancient societies often justified hierarchy by placing it at the beginning of creation. If labour obligations were established by sacred powers, resisting them could seem like resisting the world's design. Myth becomes an instrument of order, Yet the workers possess something the system cannot fully measure. They remember, they sing while clearing canals, they tell jokes about officials, they teach children which plants ease fever and which supervisors should be avoided when rations are short. They exchange favors outside recorded accounts. They build private loyalties beneath public duty. The tablet calls them hands. Daily life makes them communities. An open debate among historians concerns whether temple economies controlled most early urban labor or shared power with households, clans, and independent producers. Earlier scholarship often imagined temples dominating nearly everything. More recent research has emphasized mixed systems with private property, family production, and overlapping institutions. The workers may serve several worlds at once. A woman weaves cloth for an official storehouse, then repairs her family's garments at night. A farmer tends institutional fields but keeps a small garden beside his house. A boatman carries temple grain one week and trades fish privately the next. Human life escapes simple categories. The tablet tries to fix people beneath a cosmic measure, yet their footsteps spread beyond it. At sunset, workers return along the canal path. A child runs to meet his mother. Someone carries leftover bread hidden beneath a cloak. An older man stops to wash mud from his hands before entering the settlement. The air cools. Cooking fires appear. A song begins near the water, low and repetitive, keeping time with the scraping of grain against stone. Its words are not written. No scribe records who created it. The melody belongs to people whose names will never enter royal lists. The rulers may claim that humans were fashioned for fields. The fields tell enough. They show patience, skill, exhaustion, negotiation, and shared memory. They reveal people turning obligation into culture, even under strict measures. Workers create rhythms that belong to themselves. The tablet assigns humanity a purpose. Life quietly exceeds it. Rain begins as a thin tapping across the roofs, almost gentle enough to ignore. By dusk, the sound deepens. Water falls in heavy sheets, striking reed walls, overflowing jars, and turning every path into dark mud. You walk to shouting near the canal. A southern embankment has broken. Men carry baskets toward the breach. Women pull children from sleeping mats. Animals cry inside enclosures where water already reaches their knees. Lamps move through the rain like weak orange stars. The river has changed its mind. Floods were part of life in ancient Mesopotamia, but not every flood arrived with useful timing. Archaeological excavations at several sites have revealed layers of river sediment between periods of settlement. These deposits show that destructive inundations struck certain communities, sometimes burying floors, walls, tools, and stored food beneath mud. No single flood explains every ancient story, yet one ruined town can feel like the whole world ending. The tablet describes such a night through broken images. Water crosses boundaries without permission. Storage rooms collapse. Sacred markers vanish. The keepers lose their assigned places because every domain becomes one moving surface. The text does not blame ordinary rain. It speaks of opened gates above and broken vessels below. This language turns weather into cosmic failure. Sky and earth no longer cooperate. The system that measured water, land, food, and time cannot hold. The forces once managed through ritual and labor escape every human arrangement. You join a line of workers beside the canal breach. Mud sucks at your feet. Baskets pass from hand to hand, filled with clay, reeds, stones, and anything heavy enough to resist the current. The repair lasts only minutes. A surge tears through the new barrier. Cold water knocks two workers down. Others pull them toward on higher ground. A wooden post spins past, followed by broken roofing, baskets, and the body of a goat. The flood carries household life away piece by piece. There is no orderly evacuation. Families climb platforms, trees, and storage roofs. Boats become crowded before they leave the bank. People shout names into darkness. Some return for grain. Others return for relatives. A few return for sacred objects, because panic does not erase belief. The central marker disappears beneath brown water. Its 7 circles are covered together. The symbolic balance of the territories becomes meaningless. Floodwater does not respect boundaries, tolls, fields, or ritual rank. It enters rich houses and poor shelters with equal indifference, although the wealthy usually own better roofs and stronger boats. That old pattern remains painfully familiar. The tablet calls the disaster the drowning of measures. Chords float loose, clay lists dissolve, boundary stakes vanish, stored grain turns into paste, the entire administrative world loses shape. A society built upon counting suddenly cannot count its losses. The rain continues for 3 days. The exact number may be symbolic. Ancient narratives often use repeated numbers to give form to chaos. Still, the tablet describes each day differently. The first day destroys the fields. The second day takes the houses. The third day reaches the sanctuaries. By the final night, the water stands against the mountain road. Then fire appears. At first, it glows along the northern horizon. Refugees believe the clouds are breaking. Instead, red light spreads behind the rain. The text describes burning stones falling beyond the flooded plain. Several natural events might explain this image. Lightning could ignite stored reeds, oil, or timber. Flooded settlements may still burn when lamps overturn inside enclosed rooms. A distant volcanic eruption could redden the sky, though no certain eruption matches the tablet. The phrase may also describe warfare arriving during environmental collapse. Fire and flood often meet inside myth because together they represent total destruction. One consumes, the other covers. A fringe theory proposes that the burning stones were fragments from a celestial impact. Ancient people certainly witnessed meteors, and unusual atmospheric events could enter collective memory. However, the tablet offers no clear physical description of an impact crater or falling object. Its fire behaves more like human violence. Boats carrying armed men appear along the flooded channels. They arrive from the north where storehouses remain dry. Their torches reflect across the water. They do not rescue the stranded. They search for grain, metal, animals, and captives. Disaster has opened the land. The tablet calls these attackers the Eaters of the Broken Field. Their original name may have been omitted deliberately. Perhaps the scribe belonged to a later community that still feared them. Perhaps the title was symbolic, describing raiders who exploited weakness. You hear paddles striking water. A boat turns between submerged houses. Armed figures carry spears, axes, and burning bundles wrapped in oil-soaked paper. They enter raised buildings where grain remains dry. Anyone resisting is driven away. The flames spread despite the rain. Reed roofs catch quickly once the inner fibers ignite. Smoke rolls close to the water. Wet wood hisses. Storage jars burst from heat. Reflections make the flood appear red from horizon to horizon. This is the war of flood and fire. It may not have been one battle. The phrase could compress years of instability into a single sacred catastrophe. Flood damage leads to hunger. Hunger leads to migration. Migration leads to conflict over surviving fields. Rival groups attack weakened settlements. Environmental crisis becomes political collapse. Research from major universities has shown that ancient climate shifts sometimes coincided with settlement disruption, migration, and changing patterns of power. Such findings do not prove simple cause and effect. Human societies respond differently depending upon leadership, resources, and cooperation. A drought can weaken one region while strengthening another. A flood can destroy one city and enrich fields elsewhere. The tablet presents catastrophe as universal because memory speaks from the ruined side. The keepers attempt to preserve their authority. One orders boats reserved for grain. Another commands workers to defend the high ground. A third opens a storehouse to feed refugees. Their decisions conflict. The waterkeeper wants labor focused upon drainage. The storehouse guardian wants protection for food. The road judge wants the mountain path kept open. The seasonal watcher insists the flood will rise again. The system fragments under pressure. No shared measure can settle the dispute because time has vanished. Every choice must happen now. Authority that once depended upon balance becomes divided by urgency. A council gathers inside a half-flood hall. Rain strikes the roof. Torches smoke. One keeper accuses another of hiding supplies. A second claims that boats have been taken by relatives of officials. A third demands armed defense before another repair attempt. The tablet records no solution. It states only that the voices became many. That sentence may describe the final moment of the old order. A system can survive a disagreement during peace, during catastrophe. Disagreement becomes dangerous when trust has already weakened. People stop obeying common rules and begin protecting households, allies, and whatever resources remain. The 7 domains close their routes. The mountain traders turn back. The crossing officials raise tolls. Grain is hidden. Boats vanish at night. The network breaks into isolated pieces. An open scholarly debate concerns whether legendary flood stories preserve memories of specific disasters or express broader fears surrounding unstable environments. Some historians search for identifiable events. Others emphasize the literary power of floods as symbols of disorder, judgment, and renewal. Both possibilities may be true. A real catastrophe can become a symbolic one. The tablet preserves details too practical to feel entirely imaginary. It mentions soaked grain, drifting boundary posts, crowded roofs, and abandoned livestock. These are the observations of people who understood flood damage closely. Yet it also reshapes suffering into cosmic language. The old rulers do not simply fail. Their age is washed away. When the rain finally weakens, silence settles across the plain. Water covers fields where crops once stood. Smoke rises from burned platforms. Boats move carefully among fragments of houses. Survivors gather on an island of high ground. Some carry tools, some carry children, some carry nothing. The keepers are no longer seated together. One has disappeared. Another has fled towards the mountains. A third remains beside the ruined storehouse, surrounded by people demanding food. The order of measured domains has ended, not because a stronger god defeated it, not because a king conquered every territory. Water dissolved its boundaries, and fire destroyed what remained above them. The tablet closes the catastrophe with a line pressed more deeply than the others. When the land returned, it belonged to different names. You stand beneath a clearing sky while muddy water reflects the first stars. The fields will dry, new channels will be cut, walls will rise from the silt. But those who rebuild will inherit ruins, not certainty. They will need new rulers. They will need new stories. Morning light falls across a plain remade by water, smoke, and human exhaustion. New channels shine between banks of fresh silt. Broken walls protrude from the earth like ribs. Families gather timber, reeds, clay, and whatever tools survived. You smell wet soil warming beneath the sun. Nothing feels stable. The surviving communities no longer trust the old arrangements. Shared measures failed when routes closed and storehouses burned. Local keepers still possess knowledge, but their authority has fractured. Some are blamed for shortages. Others have vanished with their households. A few remain, surrounded by people who obey from habit rather than confidence. Into this uncertainty come new divine names. They travel through hymns, seals, ceremonies, and the speech of priests attached to growing settlements. They do not appear as wandering strangers walking openly across the fields. Their arrival is quieter. A title changes during prayer. An old sanctuary receives a new emblem. A local guardian becomes the servant, child, or aspect of a greater god. The Anunnaki enter through inheritance. Mesopotamian texts use the term for a collective of major deities. though their number and duties vary greatly. In some traditions, they belong to the highest divine assembly. In others, they judge the dead or witness decisions concerning fate. No single surviving account gives them one permanent identity. That uncertainty reflects centuries of religious change. Cities rise, compete, merge, and fall. Their gods travel with them. A deity honoured in one settlement may gain influence when that city becomes powerful. Another may lose status without disappearing completely. Priests preserve useful local customs by fitting them into broader divine families. Religion becomes a map of politics. The tablet describes the new assembly taking seats in sanctuaries already standing. This detail matters. The gods do not raise the first platforms or dig the first canals. They occupy places shaped by unnamed hands. One line calls them those who received the ordered portions. The phrasing suggests distribution, not creation. You enter a rebuilt shrine at the edge of a crowded settlement. Its walls are coated with clean white plaster. Reed mats cover the floor, bowls of grain, dates, oil, and milk stand beneath a painted symbol. A priest recites a hymn while incense smoke gathers near the roof. The divine name spoken here is new. The offering practice is not. Families still bring the same foods. Water is still poured into the same basin. The doorway faces the same direction. Beneath the plaster lies an older wall, and beneath that wall rests another foundation damaged by flood. Sacred continuity survives through renaming. A local water guardian becomes an attendant of a greater deity associated with fresh water and wisdom. A field protector becomes a minor goddess, serving a more powerful divine household. The judge of crossings becomes a gatekeeper in the heavenly court. Their independence disappears. Their function remain. The Forgotten Tablet presents this transformation as a gathering of powers. Each Anunnaki receives a portion of land, authority, or ritual duty. The ceremony resembles the division of an estate among heirs. No act of conquest is described.
Ruler. Slain?
The transition occurs through proclamation. A chief priest stands upon a raised platform while representatives from several settlements listen below. He announces that the Great Assembly has fixed the destinies of rivers, fields, winds, and roads. Each domain now belongs within a divine hierarchy. What once existed as separate authority becomes organized beneath sacred kinship. The gods are named as fathers, mothers, children, siblings, ministers, and judges. Their relationships create a system easier to remember than scattered local titles. Divine genealogy turns political absorption into family order. A conquered guardian becomes a younger brother. A displaced goddess becomes a daughter. A regnal power becomes a servant with honourable duties. The language softens loss. Researchers at Yale University have examined how Mesopotamian religion evolved through the interaction of cities, temples, and royal power. Divine rankings often reflected political circumstances without merely copying them. Priests could preserve ancient traditions while adapting them to changing institutions. The result was not a single planned theology. It was accumulated negotiation. You hear that negotiation inside the tablet. Certain lines praise the Anunnaki as rightful judges. Others speak cautiously of lands placed beneath their names. One damaged passage states that the old seats were washed, purified, and given again. The seats themselves remain important. A new god requires an ancient place. Temples gain authority by claiming that their sanctuaries stand at the center of creation. Yet their foundations may contain generations of forgotten worship. The deeper the building, the stronger the claim of continuity. New priests rarely announce that they are replacing everything. They announce restoration. This allows the Anunnaki to appear eternal even within a story that places them inside an inherited world. Once installed, they become responsible for maintaining cosmic order. Their authority stretches backward through ritual language until the moment of succession becomes almost invisible. Almost. The tablet preserves a peculiar ceremony involving 7 empty vessels. Each vessel is filled from a different source, then poured into one basin beneath the divine symbols. The act may represent the joining of territories under the new assembly. A quirky possibility concerns the vessels themselves. Ancient ritual containers sometimes carried labels, marks, or distinctive shapes identifying their origin. A priest could display regional unity through water collected from separate canals, springs, or wells. The gods receive the landscape in liquid form. The basin mixes every source until no boundary remains visible. Such a ritual is elegant. It is also political. Communities witnessing the ceremony see their local waters absorbed into a greater order. Their identity survives, but only as part of something larger. The Anunnaki become guarantors of unity because the previous network failed to protect itself. People exhausted by chaos may accept stronger hierarchy readily. Order feels merciful after disaster. The new system offers coordinated rebuilding. Temples organize labor, ration grain, maintain canals, and settle disputes. Priests keep calendars and preserve records. Leaders justify difficult decisions through divine approval. A larger divine council supports larger institutions. The Anunnaki therefore arrive not merely as characters in myth. They provide a language for centralized authority. Their assembly mirrors councils, courts, and temple administration. Their decrees explain why each power occupies a fixed place. The world becomes structured again. An open scholarly dispute concerns whether divine assemblies reflect human political institutions, or whether political institutions borrowed sacred models. The relationship likely moved in both directions. People imagined gods through familiar forms of authority, then used those gods to strengthen authority on earth. Heaven resembles government. Government claims to resemble heaven. The tablet remains unusual because it allows a glimpse of transition. The Anunnaki are praised, yet they are not presented as the first possessors of every domain. They receive responsibilities once held through older titles. This does not diminish their power. Inheritance can be stronger than creation. A creator may shape the world and withdraw. An heir occupies its institutions, controls its records, and decides which memories deserve preservation. By receiving the seats, the Anunnaki gain not only authority, but also the ability to explain where authority came from. Their priests tell the story. Their temples hold the archives. Their names enter official hymns. The unnamed keepers fade into descriptive phrases. Your ears catch the sound of a hymn rising above the rebuilt settlement. Drums mark a steady rhythm. Worshippers carry baskets toward the shrine. Children watch from doorways while officials record offerings on fresh clay. The ceremony celebrates renewal. Fields have reopened. Boats move between communities. Storehouses contain grain again. People can sleep without listening for raiders every night. The price of stability is a changed memory. Old domains become divine gifts. Local offices become sacred appointments. Surviving rulers govern beneath heavenly patrons. Every canal, field, and gate receives a recognized place within the new order. The Anunnaki take their seats. They do not enter an empty earth. They inherit cultivated soil, ruined platforms, measured fields, trade routes, labor systems, and ceremonies shaped by countless forgotten lives. They receive a world already ancient with effort. Night gathers above the shrine. Oil lamps shine along the platform. The priest speaks the names of the great assembly, one by one, until the crowd answers in a single voice. Beneath their feet, older foundations remain silent. The new gods rule completely because they now possess the places where memory is kept. A scribe sits alone in a narrow archive while evening settles over the temple roofs. Shelves of clay tablets rise around him, stacked in baskets and arranged along mud brick walls. Each basket carries a small label describing hymns, accounts, omens, or royal decrees. The room smells of wax smoke, damp clay, and old reeds, You hear the faint scrape of a stylus. A damaged tablet lies beside a fresh lump of clay. The older text contains names that no longer fit the official order. Some belong to forgotten local rulers. Others describe powers whose titles sound uncertain, even dangerous. The scribe has been instructed to copy the text. He has also been instructed to correct it. Correction sounds harmless. A broken sign is restored. A grammar mistake is repaired. An unfamiliar title is replaced with a recognized divine name. Yet each small adjustment changes who appears to have ruled the world. The old names begin to vanish. Ancient Mesopotamian texts often survived through repeated copying. Clay tablets could break, crumble, or become unreadable. Scribes preserved important works by reproducing them across generations. This process allowed myths, hymns, and royal traditions to endure for centuries. It also allowed them to change. A scribe might modernize spelling. Another could combine separate traditions. A temple school might adapt a story to honor its own patron god. A royal court could reshape the distant past so that present authority appeared natural. Memory remained alive because it was rewritten. The tablet describes this process with a phrase that sounds almost ceremonial. It speaks of old names being washed from the mouth of the land. The image may refer to erasure from ritual speech rather than physical destruction. A name no longer spoken becomes weaker. A name removed from prayer loses offerings. A name absent from official lists becomes difficult to remember. The scribe presses a familiar sign over an unfamiliar one. The new name belongs to a deity recognized across several cities. The replaced title may once have identified a local guardian, ancestral ruler, or independent power. Now that figure becomes an attendant. The transformation is subtle. Nothing is openly destroyed. The older being survives as a subordinate role within the newer divine household. Its duties remain useful. Its identity does not. This method preserves local custom while removing local independence. People can continue performing familiar rituals, but the meaning shifts. A spring once protected by an unnamed keeper now belongs to a major water god. A harvest ceremony once dedicated to an ancestral guardian now honors a divine daughter. The old sacred place remains active. Its memory receives a new owner. Researchers at Oxford University have studied how ancient religious traditions adapted across changing political landscapes. Temples rarely discarded every local practice when power shifted. Instead, priests connected older customs with larger systems of divine genealogy and authority. Adaptation was more effective than prohibition. People resist when sacred habits are taken away. They often accept change when familiar acts receive new explanations. The tablet suggests that 7 original titles were altered in this manner. One became a servant of the heavenly assembly. Another became a gatekeeper. A third was reduced to a spirit of irrigation channels. Several titles disappear entirely. Their absence may reflect damage, but the pattern feels deliberate. The text preserves enough structure to show that roles once existed, yet their holders no longer receive names. You enter the archive in your imagination. The scribe's lamp flickers against the walls. His fingers are stained with clay. A small cup of beer stands nearby, though it has warmed unpleasantly during the long task. Even sacred revision cannot improve warm beer. Hung pauses over one line. The older tablet names a female ruler associated with dark soil, boundaries, and the settling of disputes. Her title appears nowhere in the official temple lists. The scribe copies her function but assigns it to a recognized goddess. The replacement fits the theology. It also removes a mystery. The scribe may believe he is clarifying an obscure passage. Perhaps he assumes the ancient copyist used an unusual title for a familiar deity. He does not need to be part of a secret conspiracy. Erasure can happen through confidence. A scholar sees an unknown name and decides it must be a damaged version of something known. A priest sees an independent guardian and decides she must belong inside an accepted family. A ruler sees a local tradition and declares it an early form of the state religion. Each decision seems reasonable. Together, They remake the past. A fringe claim imagines organized priesthoods hiding evidence of non-human rulers. The surviving texts offer no clear proof of such a coordinated effort. Ancient archives reveal disagreement, regional variation, and inconsistent copying rather than one perfect system of control. The reality may be quieter. Institutions preserve what supports them. They neglect what does not. A name can disappear because no temple funds its hymns. A title can vanish because a student stops copying it. A local god can fade when a settlement loses population or political importance. Forgetting does not always require destruction. Sometimes it requires only silence. The tablet records a ceremony in which older clay labels were buried beneath a rebuilt archive. This may sound like concealment, but ancient builders often placed outdated tablets inside walls or foundations. Documents no longer needed could become construction fill. The practical act carries symbolic meaning. The old records literally support the new archive. You picture baskets of broken tablets carried into a foundation trench. Workers empty them between mud bricks. Hymns, tax lists, private letters, and forgotten names disappear beneath the floor. Above them, fresh shelves are built. New texts receive careful labels. The past remains present but inaccessible. A council decree from a later period proves that temple authorities sometimes standardize ritual language. Priests were instructed to use approved formulas during ceremonies. Such control reduced regional variation and strengthened institutional unity. Standardization also narrowed memory. An old title might be judged incorrect because it did not match current practice. A local pronunciation might be replaced. A ritual phrase could be shortened until its original meaning disappeared. The new version becomes official. Future scribes copy it faithfully. This is how revision turns into tradition. An open, scholarly debate concerns how deliberately ancient rulers manipulated historical memory. Some historians emphasize conscious propaganda. Others argue that much change occurred through ordinary copying, reinterpretation, and institutional preference. Both forces likely operated together. A king may order his victories exaggerated. A scribe may modernize an old text without political pressure. A priest may sincerely believe that every local deity belongs within a greater divine system. Intent varies. The result remains powerful. The tablet contains a list of titles followed by blank spaces. These spaces may mark damaged signs, omitted names, or deliberate pauses during recitation. One line instructs the reader to speak only the names established by the Great Assembly. That instruction reveals anxiety. Why command people to use approved names unless other names still circulate? Outside official ceremonies, villagers may continue whispering older titles. Families may preserve ancestral stories. Shepherds may leave small offerings at stones ignored by temple priests. Boatmen may invoke a forgotten guardian when entering dangerous channels. Official memory is never complete. Private memory survives in habit. A woman places grain beside an old boundary marker. She cannot explain why her family does it. Her grandmother taught her, and her grandmother learned from someone else. The gesture outlives the name attached to it. A fisherman touches the side of his boat before dawn. A farmer leaves the first handful of seed at the field's edge. A child is warned not to sleep beside a certain mound because an ancient keeper walks there at night. These customs form a hidden archive. No shelves contain it. No royal decree controls it. The scribe finishes his copy near midnight. He smooths the final edge and adds a line identifying the temple, ruler, and year. The new tablet appears orderly, complete, and authoritative. The older fragment remains beside it. Its unfamiliar names look awkward now. Tomorrow, both tablets may be stored, or the damaged original may be broken and used as fill. No one in the archive considers this a crime. The essential text has been preserved. Only its uncertainty has been removed. You stand among the shelves while the lamp burns lower. Thousands of tablets surround you, each carrying voices shaped by selection. Some were copied because they mattered, others vanished because no one copied them again. The forgotten rulers lose their names slowly. First, they become titles. Then they become attendants. Finally, they become empty spaces beneath recognized gods. The land still remembers their function. The archive remembers only what the new order permits itself to understand. A long clay tablet lies beneath lamplight, covered with columns of names and numbers. The signs are neat, disciplined, and strangely calm. Kings rise, rule, and vanish within a few pressed wedges. You follow the list downward. Some reigns last several years, others stretch across centuries. A few appear to rule for periods so immense that ordinary history seems to dissolve around them. The kings are presented in sequence, as though one throne passes through time from city to city. Authority moves across the land with solemn purpose. A city receives kingship, holds it briefly, then loses it through defeat, disaster, or divine decision. The numbers do not behave like human lifespans. One ruler governs for thousands of years, another reigns long enough for entire landscapes to change. Even the oldest remembered dynasty seems almost young beside these impossible spans. The list is not a simple chronicle, it is a map of legitimacy. Versions of the Sumerian king list survive on tablets copied in ancient schools and official settings. Historians have studied how the text combines rulers known from other evidence with figures whose reigns belong to mythic time. The list presents kingship as one continuous institution. Even though real Mesopotamian cities often ruled at the same time, that arrangement serves a political purpose. If kingship can exist in only one place, then the current ruler inherits every earlier throne. Rival cities become temporary holders rather than independent powers. History appears to move toward the present court. The past becomes a procession. You hear the imagined voice of a scribe reading aloud. His cadence remains steady as impossible reigns pass from one ruler to another. He does not pause to explain the numbers. He does not apologize for them. The extraordinary is recorded with the same confidence as grain deliveries. Perhaps that confidence matters most. Ancient readers may not have understood the early reigns literally in a modern sense. Enormous numbers could express sacred distance, cosmic order, or the incomprehensible age of beginnings. A ruler who lived near creation should not resemble a recent governor. Remote time demands larger measures. The tablet divides history around a great catastrophe. Kingship descends, cities flourish, and then the flood sweeps across the land. When rule resumes, reigns become shorter. The change is gradual. At first, kings still govern for centuries. Later, the numbers fall toward human proportions. Mythic time narrows into recorded memory. The pattern resembles a long corridor approaching the present. Figures at the far end appear enormous because distance distorts them. As they draw nearer, their shapes become familiar. The forgotten rulers may survive inside that distortion. A king listed for an impossible span could preserve several generations beneath one name. A city dynasty might be compressed into a single ancestral figure. A sacred office may appear as one ruler because the throne mattered more than its changing occupants. Numbers can hide complexity. Suppose a title passes through 20 leaders over 300 years. Later scribes remember only the title and total duration. The office becomes one king with an enormous reign. What began as institutional continuity turns into supernatural longevity. This possibility cannot explain every number. It does, however, reveal how the memory may transform systems into people. The earliest names in the list often sound more like titles, professions, or symbolic descriptions than personal identities. Some connect rulers with shepherding, craftsmanship, sacred animals, or divine favor. The person and the role remain difficult to separate. A ruler may become the name of his office. An office may become the name of a god. A god may later become the ancestor of a royal house. The list moves comfortably among these categories. One curious detail appears in several ancient royal traditions. Kings sometimes claimed descent from heroic figures whose historical reality remains uncertain. Such ancestry did not require modern proof, it required ritual recognition, public repetition, and acceptance by institutions that benefited from the claim. A ruler with a troubled beginning could gain strength through an impressive past. The older the ancestor, the safer the distance. No living witness can object. You enter a royal hall where a new king sits beneath a canopy of dyed wool. Officials stand along the walls. Temple representatives hold staffs. A singer recites the line of rulers leading toward the man on the throne. The performance does more than praise him. It places him inside a chain stretching toward the first descent of kingship. Every earlier city becomes part of his inheritance. Every legendary ruler lends weight to his seat. The king does not merely govern the present, he occupies accumulated time. A clay tablet rests on a low table beside the throne. The names pressed upon it have already been edited. Certain rivals appear briefly, others vanish. Defeated dynasties become interruptions. The current city receives a longer and more honourable place. The list remains flexible because legitimacy requires maintenance. A later court can copy the text again and guide its movement toward another capital. History bends without appearing broken. Kingship continues while its destination changes. The Forgotten Order may survive only as the opening movement, before the familiar dynasties. The list preserves a world where rulers seem closer to gods than humans. Their reigns belong to a time governed by different rules. They may represent ancient chiefs enlarged by memory, divine patrons treated as kings, or ceremonial offices projected backward. The text does not explain. Its silence protects authority. An open, scholarly debate concerns whether the earliest names contain historical memories or purely literary construction. Some historians search for traces of real settlements and leaders. Others emphasize the ideological design of the list and warn against reading mythical reigns as hidden biography. Both approaches reveal something important. Myth does not become useless because it lacks exact dates. It shows how a society understood power. The list teaches that kingship comes from beyond ordinary human choice. It descends, it moves, it survives catastrophe. Individuals may fail, but the institution remains sacred. That message would comfort rulers. It would also warn them, a Scythia holds kingship only temporarily. The same divine order that grants authority can remove it. No dynasty owns permanence, even when its monuments insist otherwise. The king sits beneath a dangerous inheritance. He receives glory from ancient rulers. He also receives their ending. One fringe interpretation claims the impossible. Reigns prove that non-human beings ruled early. Mesopotamia. The text does not provide biological evidence, physical descriptions, or a consistent account of such beings. Extraordinary numbers alone cannot establish extraordinary bodies. Yet the interpretation persists because the list sounds literal. Names and totals appear in orderly columns. The format resembles administration. Myth wears the clothing of record-keeping, and that combination creates unusual persuasive power. A number pressed into clay feels precise. Precision is not always accuracy. Ancient scribes used numerical systems shaped by multiples of 60, symbolic totals, copying errors, and calculations based on unfamiliar units could produce values that seem impossible today. A reign might also represent months, seasonal cycles, or institutional periods rather than solar years. No single explanation fits every entry. The list may combine symbolic arithmetic, political memory, literary tradition, and genuine chronology. Its contradictions are not flaws to be removed. They reveal layers of use. You turn the tablet beneath the lamp. A final column preserves a damaged name followed by a reign far longer than any ordinary life. The signs around it suggest that this ruler belonged to a city no longer located with certainty. Perhaps the place vanished beneath another settlement. Perhaps its name changed. Perhaps it existed only within sacred geography. The ruler may be equally elusive. No inscription outside the list confirms him. No tomb carries his title. No seal can be assigned securely to his court. Still, the name survives. That survival matters because it shows how deeply the need for continuity shaped memory. Someone copied the figure when easier names could have replaced it. Someone believed the distant ruler belonged in the chain. The list preserves echoes, not portraits. It does not reveal faces, voices, or private lives. It offers reign lengths, city names, and the movement of power. Through that narrow structure, an older system appears faintly. Rulers become longer than lives. Did it become stationers in a sacred journey? Kingship becomes older than any dynasty claiming it. You listen as the scribe completes the recitation. The final ruler receives his number. The room remains quiet. Beyond the palace walls, workers close market stalls, and families prepare evening meals. Ordinary time continues. Inside the royal hall, another kind of time has been opened, stretching from the present throne into an age where names survive without bodies. The list does not prove who ruled the earliest earth. It proves that later kings needed those rulers to have existed. A staircase climbs toward a temple whose upper walls glow beneath the afternoon sun. White plaster reflects the heat. Coloured cones form geometric patterns along the entrance. Priests move through the gateway carrying oil, grain, wool, and polished vessels. You place one foot upon the lowest step. Beneath it lies another temple. Below that rests an older platform. Farther down, hidden beneath packed mud brick, stand walls belonging to a building whose original name has disappeared. Ancient sacred sites often grew upward through repeated rebuilding. Mud brick weakened beneath rain, salt, heat, and neglect. Floors cracked, walls leaned, roofs collapsed. Rather than abandon a holy place, communities leveled damaged structures and raised new buildings upon them. The sanctuary became a mound of accumulated devotion. Each generation stood upon the remains of earlier worshippers. Excavations at sites including Eridu, Uruk, and Nipper revealed long sequences of temples constructed over older sacred buildings. Archaeologists carefully traced walls, floors, altars, and offering areas through successive layers. The plans changed, yet the sacred location often remained remarkably stable. That continuity seems deliberate. A temple does not simply occupy useful ground. It claims a place where heaven and earth are believed to meet. Moving the sanctuary might weaken that claim. Rebuilding above the same foundation allows priests to say that worship has never truly stopped. The god remains, only the walls change. You enter the newest courtyard, where attendants sweep dust from the paving. The stones beneath your feet were imported at great cost. A drain carries ritual water toward a hidden channel. Incense smoke rises near a doorway guarded by carved wooden posts. Everything appears ordered, yet one corner of the courtyard has sunk slightly. The depression follows the outline of a buried room. Workers repairing the floor discover a sealed opening beneath the paving. The gap is narrow, filled with dry soil and fragments of reed matting. A foreman lowers a lamp through the opening. Its flame reveals painted walls below. No doorway connects the buried chamber with the current temple. The room was sealed before the upper platform was completed. Whoever built above it chose not to destroy it completely. The chamber contains a low bench, 3 offering pits, and a stone block darkened by smoke. Its plan does not match the temple overhead. The entrance faces another direction. The altar stands against an unusual wall. The room may belong to a religious tradition older than the recognized divine household. A clay figurine lies beside the bench. It has no detail fate. The body is broad, with hands resting upon the abdomen. A shallow line circles the head. No horned crown identifies a familiar deity. No inscription gives a name. The figurine appears carefully placed rather than discarded. You notice small bowls arranged around it. One contains fish bones, another holds charred seeds, a third preserves traces of mineral pigment. These offerings differ from the official temple rites performed above. The buried room follows another pattern. Researchers at the University of Chicago have shown how changes in temple architecture can reveal shifts in ritual, authority, and community organization. Large platforms, restricted chambers, and formal courtyards often reflect increasingly centralized institutions. Older sacred rooms may look smaller and more accessible. Their ceremonies may involve households rather than professional priesthoods. Their deities may be local, ancestral, or closely tied to particular springs, fields, and crafts. The sealed chamber appears to belong to that smaller world. Its walls are rough, but the altar has been renewed many times. Thin layers of plaster cover earlier layers. Soot gathers in repeated bands. Generations entered this room before someone closed it. The builders above may have respected its power. They may also have feared it. Ancient people sometimes buried ritual objects when replacing buildings. Foundationer deposits could include figurines, tablets, beads, tools, and offerings. These items protected new construction and connected it with sacred authority beneath the ground. The old chamber may have become a foundation deposit on a larger scale. Its silence supports the temple overhead. The current priests explain that their god has occupied the site since creation. Their hymns describe the platform rising from primeval water. Royal inscriptions praise the ruler who restored the ancient house. Restored is a useful word. It suggests continuity even when the building is entirely new. A king rarely claims that he has replaced an older god. He says he has purified, renewed, or returned the sanctuary to its proper form. Change becomes loyalty. The buried burial chamber complicates that story. His altar does not align with the upper shrine. His offerings follow unfamiliar customs. Its figurine lacks recognized symbols. The evidence suggests that the sacred place existed before the current theology defined it. A quirky detail appears in the floor. Several small holes contain the remains of beetles. They may have entered naturally during burial. One scholar jokingly proposes that the insects were sacred guardians, though no evidence supports this charm in promotion. Archaeology often finds ordinary creatures inside extraordinary places. Mice nest among royal records. Dogs cross wet tablets. Beetles occupy forgotten sanctuary. The past is never as ceremonially tidy as later reconstructions prefer. You descend through the narrow opening while dust floats around the lamp. The buried air feels cooler. Your hand brushes rough plaster. A faint scent of ash remains trapped within the soil, though centuries have passed. The stone altar bears shallow grooves. Something was poured there repeatedly. Water may have carried offerings toward the floor. Oil may have burned in small cups. Bloodless mixtures of grain, milk, beer, and herbs could have been used during seasonal rites. No text explains the practice. The room speaks through wear. A polished patch near the entrance shows where people placed their hands. A hollow beside the bench marks repeated kneeling. The altar edge has been repaired with darker clay. These traces reveal devotion without names. The forgotten tablet mentions a house beneath the appointed house. The phrase may be metaphorical, describing an older divine order beneath a newer one. It may also refer to actual architecture. A temple can contain history vertically. The upper rooms hold current gods. The lower layers hold earlier powers. The open scholarly debate concerns whether continuity of place means continuity of worship. Some historians argue that sacred locations preserved long traditions, even as divine names changed. Others caution that rebuilding may reflect practical convenience, political control, or the prestige of occupying an important mound. The same foundation can support very different beliefs. A new temple may inherit the land without inheriting the old god. Yet ceremonies performed above older altars create an unavoidable connection. Priests may deny replacement, but their feet rest upon it. The buried chamber also carries political meaning. By building over an earlier sanctuary, a new institution claims the authority of everyone who worshipped there. Local families who once served the older cult now enter the larger temple system. Their sacred place survives, though access becomes restricted. The community loses ownership. The institution gains ancestry. A fringe theory imagines that sealed chambers beneath Mesopotamian temples contain hidden machines, forbidden records, or preserved bodies of non-human rulers. Excavations have not produced evidence for such claims. Most buried rooms contain ordinary ritual remains, construction material, and damaged objects. The truth remains quietly unsettling without hidden machines. Religions can occupy older sacred spaces so completely that the original worship becomes invisible. The place remains holy while the reason changes. You return to the upper courtyard. The sunlight feels harsh after the buried darkness. Priests prepare an evening ceremony. Musicians tune stringed instruments. Worshippers gather with offerings wrapped in cloth. None of them knows the name once spoken below. The new hymn praises the current god as founder of the sanctuary. The words rise above the courtyard and drift across the city roofs. Beneath the singers, the faceless figurine remains surrounded by small bowls. Two sacred worlds occupy the same ground. One possesses music, records, priests, and royal support. The other possesses only plaster, soot, and the shape of repeated touch. Night gathers around the temple platform. Lamps appear along the stairs. From the plain, the sanctuary seems eternal, rising above houses like a fixed mountain. Its permanence is an illusion created by layers. Walls fall, names change, foundations remain. You rest your hand against the lowest visible brick, knowing that older bricks continue far beneath it. Each buried wall belongs to people who believe their sacred order would endure. The temple stands because those orders did not entirely disappear. They were covered, absorbed, and made useful. The newest god receives worship at the summit. Far below, an unnamed presence still occupies the first room. The tablet turns beneath the lamplight, and the signs seem to shift with every change of angle. Some wedges are crisp, others fade into scratches. A few resemble forms known from much older texts, while several refuse to sit comfortably within any familiar pattern. You hear the soft rasp of paper as copies are compared. The problem is not only what the tablet says, the problem is what language lies beneath the writing. Cuneiform was not created for one language alone. The script began in southern Mesopotamia, then spread across regions where people spoke very different tongues. Scribes adapted the same signs for Sumerian, Akkadian, Hittite, Elamite, Hurrian, and several other languages. A sign could represent a word, it could represent a sound. It could also serve as a silent marker telling the reader what kind of thing followed. The system was flexible, powerful, and wonderfully inconvenient. A single group of wedges might carry several possible readings. Context usually guides the translator, but damaged context offers little mercy. When a text preserves unusual grammar, the uncertainty multiplies. The Forgotten Tablet contains phrases that seem Sumerian on the surface. Their structure is not entirely Sumerian. Words appear in unexpected order. Verbs carry endings that seem unnecessary. Certain titles look as though they were translated piece by piece from another language. The result feels like a shadow pressed beneath the visible sentence. Researchers at the University of Chicago have long examined how ancient scribes copied bilingual texts, lexical lists, and translated traditions. Such tablets reveal that scribes often preserved words from languages they no longer spoke fluently. A sacred phrase could survive because its sound mattered, even after its meaning became uncertain. The tablet may belong to that world. You imagine a scribe seated in a temple school. His teacher dictates a line from an older source. The student recognizes most signs, yet the grammar sounds strange. He copies carefully because correction might damage a sacred formula. No one explains the oldest words. They are simply ancient. One phrase describes the forgotten rulers as those who stand inside the first breath. The wording seems poetic, but the signs can also be read as a sequence of sounds without clear meaning in Sumerian. Perhaps they preserve a foreign title. Perhaps they imitate one. Ancient scribes sometimes used familiar signs to approximate unfamiliar names. The process resembles writing a foreign word through the closest sounds available. Precision suffers. Over generations, the copied form drifts farther from its origin. A mountain title enters the lowlands. A local scribe hears it imperfectly. Another copies the written version. A later reader treats the strange sounds as ordinary words. The original name disappears beneath the interpretation. This process may explain why the tablet's titles feel descriptive. A foreign name could be reshaped into a meaningful local phrase. What began as an unfamiliar sound becomes the ancient one who fastens the land. The new meaning may have little connection with the first. The title survives because misunderstanding gives it a second life. You run your eyes across a damaged line where 3 signs repeat. The sequence appears nowhere else in known administrative writing. One sign resembles a reed shelter, another suggests enclosure, the third may indicate voice, mouth, or command. Together, they might mean house of enclosed speech. They might also reproduce the sound of a lost name. A quirky possibility emerges from scribal school traditions. Students sometimes copied words they could pronounce but not explain. Much as children repeat old songs without understanding every phrase, a mysterious expression could continue for centuries through disciplined memorization and mild confusion. Sacred education rewards accuracy. It does not always reward question. The tablet shows signs of repeated copying. Certain lines contain doubled words, perhaps because a scribe's eye returned to the wrong place. Another line omits a phrase that grammar seems to require. These are common copying mistakes, yet they also reveal the distance between the final tablet and its source. The text is not a direct voice from the beginning. It is a chain of voices. Each scribe preserves something and changes something. A wedge grows longer. A rare scene becomes familiar. A strange word becomes a title. Meaning settles in layers. The earliest layer may belong to a language spoken before written records became common in the region. Historians have proposed that southern Mesopotamia contained linguistic communities whose names are lost. Sumerian itself stands alone, with no securely proven close relative. That isolation invites speculation. Some scholars search for traces of earlier languages within place names, river names, professions, and agricultural terms, words connected with farming, crafts, and local geography may preserve contact between different populations. The debate remains open. Language contact rarely leaves a tidy boundary. People trade, marry, migrate, and work together. Words pass between communities. Titles move with institutions. A ruler may govern people who speak several languages, each using a different name for the same office. The tablet could preserve such overlap. Its visible language may be Sumerian. Its political concepts may come from elsewhere. Its sacred formulas may be older than book. You hear another sound in the imagined schoolroom. A reed stylus taps against clay. The teacher pronounces a title slowly. Students repeat it together. Their voices flatten unfamiliar sounds into the rhythm of their own speech. Years later, one of those students becomes a temple scribe. He copies the title from memory. He chooses signs that seem appropriate. The written form now suggests a meaning the spoken form never possessed. Translation becomes invention, not deliberate invention, human invention. The forgotten rulers may therefore seem strange because their names pass through too many mouths. They might have been ordinary leaders remembered through a language no longer understood. Their titles may preserve roles that cannot be translated directly. One sign cluster appears beside references to measuring, boundary setting, and ritual speech. It might identify a council office. It might describe a group responsible for confirming land agreements. A later scribe reads it as a divine collective. The shift from office to deity may begin through grammar. If a title loses its ordinary context, readers search for another category. A group that assigns land, receives offerings, and speaks decrees sounds divine when its human setting disappears. Language transforms a memory without changing the signs. A fringe theory claims that unusual grammar proves the text came from beings whose thought did not follow human language. No evidence supports that conclusion. Human writing already produces enough confusion through copying, translation, regional dialects, and centuries of reinterpretation. The mystery remains entirely possible within ordinary history. Ordinary history is not simple. A council decree from later Mesopotamia shows how titles could remain in formal use long after daily speech changed. Officials continued using ceremonial phrases because tradition gave them authority. Some expressions became nearly impossible to translate even for ancient commentators. The tablet may contain such fossilized language. A fossil preserves shape after life has gone. A phrase can do the same. Its grammar hardens. Its original voice disappears. Its outline remains within later speech. The open scholarly debate concerns how confidently translators should reconstruct unknown words from context. One approach favors the most likely reading within known grammar. Another warns that smoothing every strange phrase may erase evidence of lost languages or unfamiliar traditions. Too much caution leaves the tablet silent. Too much confidence makes it say what the translator expects. You stand between those risks. The signs wait without preference. A translator proposes that one title means Lord of the Sealed Earth. Another reads it as People from the Closed Land. A third argues that the phrase should not be translated because it may be a foreign name. Each version creates a different history. The first suggests a deity. The second suggests migrants. The third preserves uncertainty. No tool can recover the original pronunciation. No living speaker can correct the vowels. The clay stores wedges, not voices. Still, patterns remain. Rare signs gather around references to mountain passes, deep water, and the first division of land. These may indicate borrowed words tied to geography. The tablet's hidden language could belong to people who named places before later cities claimed them. Their words survive where their political identity does not. A river keeps an old name. A mountain carries another. A ritual title remains inside a hymn. The people themselves vanish from official memory. You listen as the scholar reads the line aloud using reconstructed sounds. The words feel careful and distant. Then he reads the same signs through another possible pronunciation, and the sentence changes. The rulers become guardians. The guardians become ancestors. The ancestors become a place name. Nothing on the claymores, only the voice changes. The deepest secret may not be a hidden message waiting for one perfect translation. It may be the opposite. The tablet preserves several layers that cannot be separated completely. A later language speaks through an older script. An older title survives inside a newer myth. A forgotten people remain present as grammar. The lamp burns lower beside the tablet. Shadows settle inside the wedges. The signs no longer look like answers. They resemble doors pressed into clay, each opening toward another vanished voice. Beneath the language that can be read, another language waits without sound. Night settles slowly across the plain, cooling the baked earth and drawing voices from hidden courtyards. Lamps appear beside doorways. Dogs bark once, then grow quiet. Above the roofs, the sky opens with unusual clarity. You climb a narrow stair towards an observation platform. The steps feel rough beneath your feet. A cold iron latch rests beside the final doorway. When it lifts, the wind carries scents of wax smoke. garden herbs, and distant water. 3 watchers stand beneath the stars. One holds a clay tablet covered with small marks. Another carries a cord stretched between wooden pegs. The third watches the eastern horizon through a gap cut into the wall. No instrument resembles a modern telescope. Their tools are patience, memory, geometry, and repeated attention. The tablet describes these figures as guardians of the turning lights. They do not command the stars. They observe when each light appears, disappears, brightens, or changes position. Their authority grows from prediction. A ruler may promise rain. A watcher knows when the flood season usually begins. A priest may speak of divine favor. A careful observer notices that certain stars return near planting time. Knowledge of cycles becomes a form of power because agriculture depends upon timing. Seeds placed too early may rot. Seeds planted too late may wither. Herds must move before grazing fails. Canals must be cleared before water rises. The sky becomes a calendar written without clay. Records from ancient Mesopotamia confirm that scholars tracked the moon, planets, eclipses, and unusual celestial events across long periods. Their observation later became some of the most detailed astronomical records in the ancient world. These records did not separate science from religion. A bright planet could signal divine intention. An eclipse could warn a king. A new moon could determine ritual dates. A star rising before dawn could guide harvest preparation. The watchers live inside both systems. You stand beside the eastern wall while one observer points toward a bright object low above the horizon. It appears steady, unlike the nearby stars. He records its position against a familiar constellation. The planet moves slowly across successive nights. Its path seems wandering yet not random. The Forgotten Tablet links one such wandering light with a ruler who governed seasonal change. The name is damaged, but the title may mean keeper of the returning path. This ruler does not hold a field or canal. The ruler holds recurrence. The distinction is important. Agricultural authority usually concerns places. Astronomical authority concerns time. A field remains where it is. A planet disappears, returns, and sometimes reverses direction against the stars. To ancient observers, that movement feels deliberate. The planet pauses, it turns backward, it resumes its journey. The watchers do not know the modern mechanics of planetary motion, but they recognize the pattern. Their records allow them to anticipate future appearances with growing confidence. The ruler connected with that planet becomes a guardian of repetition. Perhaps the title belongs to a priestly office responsible for maintaining a calendar. Perhaps it names a deity associated with the bright object. Perhaps the text preserves an older system in which celestial cycles legitimized earthly rulers. A leader who understands the sky appears closer to heaven. You hear a reed stylus press into damp clay. The observer writes the month, direction, brightness, and nearby stars. His notation is brief because the sky will not wait for elegant prose. Another watcher compares the entry with an older tablet stored in a basket. The previous observation occurred many years earlier. The position is similar. The cycle returns. A council relying upon such records could plan ceremonies and labor with remarkable precision. It could announce the expected season before others felt its arrival. Prediction would seem almost supernatural to people who did not see the archive behind it. The hidden system begins to reveal itself. Water follows seasonal rhythms. Planting follows water. Offerings follow planting. Kingship follows ceremony. Ceremony follows the sky. The rulers who command society may therefore depend upon watchers who command the calendar, not through force, through timing. One's damaged passage describes 7 lights assigned to 7 regions. The number may refer to visible celestial bodies known to ancient observers. It may also preserve an older symbolic arrangement connecting territories with heavenly cycles. The deep-water domain receives a pale wandering light. The high-ground domain receives the red one. The fertile territory receives the brightest morning star. The crossing region belongs to the swift light nearest the sun. The final associations remain unclear because the tablet breaks across the lower column. Such correspondence may never have guided real administration. They might belong to ritual poetry, yet ancient societies often connected cities, gods, planets, metals, colours, and sacred animals through elaborate systems. Order becomes easier to remember when every part mirrors another. The earth reflects the sky. The city reflects the earth. The ruler reflects the city. This pattern offers stability during uncertain times. A flood may destroy boundaries, but the stars return. A dynasty may fall, but the moon continues its cycle. A temple may burn, yet familiar lights rise above the ruins. Celestial repetition promises that disorder is temporary. Your mind drifts toward the western horizon, where the moon appears thin and silver. The watchers note its first visibility. This moment determines the beginning of a new month. Clouds can complicate the decision. Dust can hide the crescent. Two observers may disagree about what they saw. A quirky administrative problem follows. If one watcher claims the new moon appeared and another denies it, ritual schedules may shift. Workers, priests, and traders all become affected by a faint curve of light that may have been partly hidden by haze. Even sacred calendars suffer from poor visibility. The tablet includes a phrase that may describe such uncertainty. It says, "When the horn is absent, wait for the second witness." The horn likely refers to the crescent. The second witness may be another observer. This detail feels practical rather than mythical. It suggests procedures designed to reduce error. Important decisions required more than one pair of eyes. The watchers are not merely dreamers gazing upward. They are officials. Their reports influence planting, taxation, ritual, travel, and royal safety. A mistaken observation could disrupt an entire month. An open scholarly debate concerns how early systematic astronomy began in Mesopotamia. Some historians emphasize the sophisticated records preserved from later periods. Others search for older traditions embedded within myths, calendars, and architectural alignments. The Forgotten Tablet may belong to that uncertain middle ground. Its celestial language appears organized. Its observations remain too fragmentary for certainty. One line connects the first flooding of a canal with the disappearance of a particular star cluster at dawn. Another links the return of a bright planet with the opening of grain stores. These may describe actual seasonal correlations. They may also describe ritual timing shaped by inherited belief. The distinction matters less to the farmers waiting below. They need the correct day, near midnight. The watchers place 7 clay tokens around a shallow bowl. Each token bears a celestial sign. Water fills the bowl until reflections of the stars tremble across its surface. The Fremeni may test visibility. It may symbolize heaven descending into earthly water. It may simply help exhausted observers remain awake. The tablet calls the bowl the mirror of the first rulers. No faces appear within it, only lights. This phrase suggests that the lost rulers may have been represented by celestial bodies rather than remembered individuals. Their authority survives as cycles, not biographies. A ruler becomes a planet because the planet returns. A dynasty becomes a constellation because the constellation endures. An ancestral office becomes a star because the star watches every generation. Such transformation offers immortality without preserving a human life. The watchers know that clouds can hide the sky, but the lights remain beyond them. In the same way, names may vanish while functions continue. The Keeper of Water survives through the moon's pull upon ritual time. The Guardian of Fields survives through the seasonal rising of stars. The Ruler of Crossings survives through a planet traveling between celestial regions. The system moves upward when earthly memory becomes unstable. A fringe interpretation claims that the Watchers recorded visits from beings descending from the planets. The tablet does not describe machines, vessels, or travelers from other worlds. Its language concerns omens, cycles, light, and authority. The mystery lies closer to human imagination. People look upward and place their oldest systems among the stars because the heavens appear beyond decay. Mud brick collapses, clay tablets break, human bodies fail. The sky seems permanent. Of course, even celestial patterns change across immense spans, though no ancient watcher could perceive such slow alteration. For practical human time, the stars offer dependable repetition. That dependability becomes sacred. You stand beside the platform wall as the eastern sky begins to pale. Roosters call from courtyards below. A cool breeze moves across the rooftops. The observers complete their final entries. One places the clay tablet in a wicker basket. Another adjusts the sighting pegs. The third remains facing the horizon. A bright star fades as dawn approaches. Its disappearance is not a loss. The watcher knows it will return at the proper season. That confidence contains the entire authority of the night sky. The forgotten rulers may no longer possess names, temples, or living servants, yet their pattern remains overhead, repeated through light, absence, and return. You descend the stair while the city wakes beneath you. Bakers open ovens. Boatmen prepare ropes. Farmers move toward the canals. None of them sees the full celestial system guiding the morning. Still, every task begins within its measure. A brush moves slowly across compacted soil, while the afternoon heat settles over the excavation. Each stroke reveals another edge of pale bone. The object lies beside a stone blade, several shell fragments, and a blackened patch where fire once burned. You kneel close to the trench. Nothing here resembles a palace. No carved throne appears. No divine symbol identifies the dead. Only bone, stone, ash, and disturbed earth remain beneath your hands. The skeleton rests on one side, knees drawn toward the chest. A small cup stands near the head. 2 beads lie beside the wrist. The burial seems careful, although the body carries no sign of wealth. A sample is taken from the bone, another comes from charcoal beneath the grave. The dates do not agree comfortably with the expected sequence. The charcoal appears older than the burial. The bone seems younger than the floor surrounding it. The stone blade belongs to a style usually placed centuries earlier. Each result can be explained, but the explanations require patience. Scientific dating rarely provides one perfect answer. Radiocarbon measurement estimates when once living material stopped exchanging carbon with the environment. Researchers at Oxford University and laboratories across the United States have refined this method through careful calibration. Tree rings, lake deposits, and other records help convert measurements into historical date ranges. The result is not a single year, it is a range of probability. A bone may fall within several possible periods. Contamination can shift the estimate. Old wood burned long after a tree died can produce an earlier date than the event being studied. Material can move through disturbed soil and settle beside objects from another age. The ground remembers badly. Humans make it worse. A family digs a grave through an older floor. A later wall cuts across an earlier building. Floodwater moves pottery into another layer. Burrowing animals carry seeds downward. Builders reuse ancient bricks because old bricks remain perfectly useful and entirely indifferent to chronology. Archaeologists must untangle these movements. You watch a specialist label each sample with quiet precision. The soil around the burial changes colour near the shoulder. That stain may mark the original grave cut. If so, the body was placed after the surrounding floor had already been abandoned. The uncomfortable date becomes less mysterious. It also becomes more interesting. The burial shows that the people returned to a ruined place. They knew the mound held older structures. Perhaps they considered the location sacred. Perhaps the dead person belonged to a family claiming ancient rights over the land. A later burial inside an older sanctuary can create the illusion of impossible continuity. The illusion still reveals belief. Nearby, a stone foundation extends beneath several architectural layers. Its blocks are larger than expected for the visible building. The upper temple uses mud brick, yet the buried base contains carefully fitted limestone brought from far away. Someone invested heavily in the site before the recognized temple rose. The foundation has no inscription. Its builders remain unknown. Researchers from the University of Chicago have shown that settlement mounds can preserve thousands of years of rebuilding. Each layer may contain walls, floors, refuse, burials, and materials moved from other periods. Establishing sequence requires more than digging downward. Lower does not always mean older. A pit can carry recent objects deep into ancient soil. A collapsed wall can place old bricks above younger floors. An erosion channel can remove several centuries and bring distant layers together. Stratigraphy is a conversation between order and disturbance. The stones complicate the conversation further. A polished tool found beneath the temple resembles objects from an upland culture. Its material comes from a volcanic source far to the north. Chemical analysis can identify the source region, but it cannot reveal who carried the tool south. A trader may have brought it, a migrant may have owned it, a priest may have received it as an offering, a later builder may have reused it as foundation fill. The object proves connection. It does not prove conquest. The tablet's hidden timeline tempts the mind towards certainty. Strange dates seem ready to confirm an older civilization. Unusual materials appear to support forgotten rulers arriving from distant lands, yet each discovery carries several possible stories. Good evidence narrows possibility. It rarely removes imagination completely. You enter a temporary laboratory beside the excavation. Bone fragments rest in padded trays. Stone tools lie beneath numbered cards. A microscope stands near containers of soil samples. The room smells of paper, alcohol, dust, and hot electrical equipment. A tooth receives special attention. Preserves chemical signatures connected with childhood water and food. Isotope analysis can sometimes reveal whether a person grew up near the place of burial or travelled from another region. The results suggest distance. This individual did not spend early life on the southern plain. The chemical pattern fits upland geology more closely. A mountain-born person lies buried beneath a lowland sacred site. The finding supports mobility between regions. It may hint at marriage, trade, migration, forced movement, or religious travel. It does not identify the person as one of the hidden rulers. Still, the burial changes the atmosphere. The mountains are no longer distant ideas. They are present inside human tissue. The skeleton carries another unusual feature. The back of the skull appears slightly elongated. A fringe explanation claims that such shapes indicate non-human ancestry. Physical anthropology offers a more grounded possibility. Some cultures deliberately shaped infant skulls using cloth bindings or boards. The practice created visible identity. It could mark family, status, beauty, or belonging. Universities including Harvard University have studied intentional body modification across ancient populations. Such customs demonstrate how dramatically human appearance can vary without requiring different biology. The dead person may have looked striking in life. A visitor from another community might interpret that appearance as sacred, foreign, or unsettling. Clothing, hair, paint, and shaped skulls could transform ordinary humans into figures later described as more than human. Memory exaggerates visible difference. Myth preserves the exaggeration. A small hole in one tooth creates another curious detail. Fine plant fibers remain trapped inside it. The material may come from food, medicine, or burial contamination. Someone jokes that the ancient individual suffered the first documented dislike of dental cleaning. The tooth offers no reply. Quirky evidence often feels more intimate than monumental evidence. A worn joint reveals repeated lifting. A healed fracture shows survival after injury. Tooth decay suggests diet. Muscle attachments record years of physical labor. Bones preserve lives more reliably than titles. They also preserve inequality. Several nearby skeletons show nutritional stress during childhood. Growth interruptions appear in teeth. Some joints are damaged from heavy work. Another burial contains richer offerings and fewer signs of physical strain. The social order shaped bodies. A cosmic story may describe humanity as one laboring group, but skeletons reveal differences in food, work, illness, and treatment. Some people carried heavier burdens than others. Science does not remove mystery. It relocates it. Instead of asking whether an ancient ruler lived for thousands of years, you ask why certain children lacked food while nearby storehouses remained full. Instead of searching for beings from another world, you examine how migrants entered local society and how their identities changed. The questions become more human. They also become harder to avoid, and open scholarly debate concerns. How much population movement shaped early Mesopotamian civilization? Some researchers emphasize local development across long periods. Others highlight migration, trade, and cultural exchange between lowlands, highlands, and neighboring regions. Genetic studies may add evidence, but interpretation remains difficult. Ancient samples are limited, preservation is uneven. Modern populations cannot be treated as simple copies of ancient ones. Identity includes language, custom, family, and political belonging, not only ancestry. A person born in the mountains may become fully integrated into a southern community. A local child may adopt foreign ritual traditions. Biological movement and cultural movement do not always follow the same path. The tablet may remember outsiders as rulers because they carried rare knowledge. It may describe local elites using foreign symbols. It may preserve a ceremonial fiction created long after any migration occurred. Bones cannot settle the text alone. Stones cannot settle it either. A strange foundation proves earlier construction. It does not identify the builders. A foreign tool proves contact. It does not reveal political control. An unusual burial proves difference. It does not prove divinity. Scientific evidence challenges simple timelines because reality rarely forms a straight line. Settlements overlap. People return to ruins. Objects travel. Names change faster than buildings. Bodies move across landscapes while traditions remain behind. You step back into the trench as evening cools the soil. The skeleton has been fully outlined but not yet lifted. Shadows gather inside the grave cut. The cup near the head catches a narrow band of light. The dead person remains unnamed. The dates remain broad. The evidence refuses both easy dismissal and easy wonder. Something older existed beneath the recognized order. Someone from far away entered this place. A sacred foundation stood before the visible temple. These facts are real. Their meaning remains unsettled. You rest the brush beside the trench while the last sunlight leaves the stones. Science has not revealed impossible rulers. It has revealed a world where people, objects, and beliefs crossed boundaries more often than simple histories allow. The timeline bends, it does not break. The translation room remains quiet except for turning pages and the faint hum of electric lights. 4 scholars sit around the tablet, each carrying years of study, private habits, and well-defended caution. You stand near the long table. A magnifying lens rests above the clay. Photographs cover one wall. Copies of the signs lie in careful rows, but agreement seems farther away than ever. The first scholar sees gods. She points to the divine marker beside one damaged title. The sign is shallow, yet its upper wedge appears deliberate. In her reading, the forgotten rulers belong to a sacred assembly older than the familiar divine order. They are not human kings. They are powers associated with land, water, boundaries, and celestial cycles. Her interpretation fits the ceremonial language. It explains why offerings appear beside their titles. It also explains why the tablet describes their authority through cosmic images rather than ordinary administration. The second scholar remains unconvinced. He studies the same wedge and calls it accidental damage. Without the divine marker, the rulers become ancestral chiefs whose offices later acquired sacred language. He points toward early communities where leadership may have depended upon irrigation, trade, ritual, and dispute settlement. A title such as Keeper of the First Measure could belong to a human official remembered through generations. The gods, in his view, came later. The earliest rulers were people. The third scholar rejects both readings. She believes the figures are metaphors. Water, soil, grain, wind, and time were not controlled by literal beings. The tablet personifies natural forces to explain how the world acquired order. A river appears as a keeper because rivers govern settlement. A field appears as a guardian because fertile land sustains life. A planet appears as a ruler because its cycle measures sacred time. No hidden dynasty is required. The fourth scholar watches without speaking. His notes contain another possibility. The titles may represent offices, clans, or councils whose meaning shifted during translation. The text could preserve institutional memory rather than biography or mythology. Those who held the first land may have been groups. Each group may have controlled a region, craft, or seasonal responsibility. Later scribes misunderstood collective titles as divine names. 4 interpretations now surround one fragment. Gods, ancestors, metaphors, institutions. The clay offers room for each. This is the problem with damaged evidence. Every missing wedge becomes a space where reasoning enters. Good scholars recognize that danger. They compare grammar, context, archaeology, parallel texts, and historical probability. They also remain human. A researcher trained in religion notices divine patterns. A political historian notices authority. A linguist notices translation. An archaeologist notices settlement structure. Expertise illuminates. It also directs attention. Records from major universities confirm that interpretation often changes when new fragments are discovered. A word once translated as king may become governor. A divine name may prove to be a place. A mysterious title may match an administrative office found on another tablet. Knowledge advances through correction. Certainty advances more slowly. You hear the first scholar read a key line aloud. She translates it as, "The elder gods fixed the earth before the great names assembled." The second scholar reads the same line differently. The ancestral leaders established the fields before the royal houses gathered. The third offers another version. The ancient powers set the land in order before creation received its names. Each translation sounds plausible. Each creates a separate world. The disagreement begins with a sign that can mean earth, field, territory, or land. Another sign can mean elder, former, first, or ancient. A verb may indicate fastening, establishing, binding, or assigning. Ancient language does not always divide meaning neatly. Context should decide. The context is broken. A small fragment from another collection appears to contain a parallel phrase. Its signs mention those who sit beneath the first boundary. Unfortunately, the crucial title is missing there as well. The second text confirms the pattern. It does not identify the rulers. A quirky detail enters through the reverse side. One scholar notices that the scribe pressed the clay against woven cloth before writing. The fabric pattern remains faintly visible beneath several lines. The tablet may have rested on a folded mat. Perhaps the scribe lacked a proper board. Even a debate about primeval rulers begins with someone improvising a writing surface. The woven impression provides no answer, but it gives the object a domestic quality. Sacred mystery rests upon ordinary craftsmanship. Someone shaped clay. Someone prepared the room. Grand theories often stand upon small practical acts. The scholars turn toward the phrase describing humanity as hands beneath the measure. The divine interpretation sees a creation myth in which higher beings assign labor to humans. The ancestral interpretation sees political ideology. The metaphorical interpretation sees an agricultural society explaining dependence upon land. The institutional interpretation sees a labor system preserved through sacred vocabulary. Again, every reading explains something. None explains everything. The open debate grows sharper around the throne established. before heavenly authority. A literal reading suggests an earthly ruler preceding the divine assembly. A symbolic reading interprets the throne as the stable land itself. Another approach argues that the phrase reflects temple ritual. A sacred seat may have represented authority before a particular god received it through ceremony. The throne could belong to no person. It might belong to the office. A council decree from the later city proves that sacred objects could hold legal importance. Thrones, staffs, seals, and temple emblems sometimes represented institutional authority during agreements. A ruler did not need to be physically present if his seal appeared. A god did not need a body if the sacred seat stood ready. The tablet's empty throne may therefore represent transferable power. That possibility unsettles every side. If authority belongs to objects and offices, then the question who ruled may be too simple. Rule could have existed as a network of responsibilities without one sovereign figure. Modern minds often search for a face. Ancient system may offer a seat. A fringe theory enters the discussion through a popular book claiming that the unknown rulers were survivors from a civilization destroyed before the flood. The scholars reject its certainty. No city matching such claims has been identified securely. No unmistakable technology appears within the layers. No inscription provides a direct account of advanced survivors governing Mesopotamia. Yet the theory touches a genuine question. How much cultural memory can survive catastrophe? A community may preserve songs, rituals, tools, and titles after losing written records. Migrants may carry fragments of older institutions into new settlements. A broken tradition can persist without preserving its original history. The lost civilization need not be technologically extraordinary. It may simply be forgotten. The tablet could preserve memories from communities that never built monumental cities. Their influence might survive through irrigation customs, sacred measurements, burial rites, or regional titles. Such societies leave weaker archaeological signatures than empires. Mud walls dissolve, wood rots, reeds vanish, oral names disappear. Absence of monuments does not prove absence of organization. It also does not prove hidden greatness. The discussion turns toward the Anunnaki. One scholar argues that the tablet clearly places another order earlier. Another warns that the sequence may be literary rather than chronological. A poet can say that darkness came before dawn without describing political succession. A ritual can place stars before divine names without implying earlier rulers. Ancient texts organize meaning through sequence. Sequence is not always history. The phrase "before the great names were called" may describe a state of ritual incompletion. The world exists, but its powers have not been formally assigned. In that reading, the earlier rulers are temporary personifications within creation. They do not govern an actual prehistoric Earth. The opposite view remains possible. The text may remember institutions absorbed into later theology. The earlier order disappears because new religious language reorganizes it. Both interpretations fit known patterns of ancient thought. Claim victory. You notice how calm the scholars remain despite disagreement. No one raises a voice. Notes are exchanged, dictionaries open, tea cools beside the photographs. Serious uncertainty rarely resembles dramatic revelation. It resembles patient resistance to easy answers. Harvard University historians have often emphasized that myths should be read within their social and literary settings. Stanford University researchers have shown how evidence from climate, migration, and technology can complicate inherited narratives. Oxford University specialists have demonstrated how language shifts across copies and centuries. Authority grows from methods, not confidence alone. The tablet demands several methods at once. Cannot settle architecture. Architecture cannot identify a divine name. Bones cannot interpret metaphor. Myth cannot date a foundation. Each field holds one piece. The hidden truth may exist only in their overlap. A final line receives attention near midnight. It states that the earlier rulers were neither born in houses nor seated among the great names. The divine scholar sees primordial beings. The ancestral scholar sees outsiders. The metaphorical scholar sees natural forces. The institutional scholar sees offices without hereditary succession. The sentence refuses closure. Perhaps that refusal belongs to the original text. The scribe may not have known either. He could have copied a tradition already debated in his own time. Ancient scholars questioned unusual words, compared variants, and preserved competing explanations. They were not passive receivers of perfect myths. They argued too, the tablet may therefore preserve uncertainty as part of its meaning. The forgotten rulers stand at the edge of categories. They are described like gods, organized like officials, remembered like ancestors, and distributed like natural forces. No translation settles all four. You remain beside the table as the scholars pack their notes. The clay rests beneath protective glass. Its wedges hold several histories without choosing between them. Perhaps gods ruled. Perhaps leaders became gods. Perhaps offices became leaders. Perhaps landscapes became office. The evidence does not collapse into one answer. It forms a circle around an absence. At the center, the unknown rulers remain unnamed, neither fully human nor securely divine. A priest closes the archive door while dust moves through the temple courtyard. The wooden bar drops into place with a dull sound beyond the wall. Merchants call across the market, children chase one another between baskets, and officials prepare for another day of measured order. Nothing appears hidden, yet entire histories can disappear without locked chambers. You walk beneath painted walls where royal victories cover older plaster. The newest scenes show a king receiving authority from recognized gods. Priests stand behind him. Captives kneel below. The message is clear enough for anyone entering the hall. Power comes from heaven. The image leaves no room for uncertain predecessors, and the older painting survives beneath the surface, visible only where the plaster has cracked. A different figure once occupied the central position. Its outline lacks a crown. Several smaller people stand around it rather than below it. The arrangement suggests council instead of monarchy. No one entering the hall can see that design now. Political power often changes memory by changing what remains visible. A new ruler rebuilds gates, renames streets, restores temples, and replaces inscriptions. The older order may survive inside walls, foundations, and reuse stone. Public memory follows the newest surface. Ancient Mesopotamian kings frequently described themselves as restorers of sacred buildings. Royal inscriptions recorded construction, military success, canal repairs, and divine favor. These texts were placed where later rulers might find them, sometimes inside foundations. A king wrote for the future, "I knew buildings would fall. I wanted his name to remain beneath the next rebuilding." The forgotten rulers possessed no such advantage, or their inscriptions were removed. Their authority belonged to fragile materials, oral traditions, or institutions later absorbed by stronger states. A reed shrine leaves a little behind. A mud seal crumbles. A spoken title disappears when no child learns it. Forgetting can therefore follow material inequality. Powerful institutions carve stone and maintain archives. Small communities preserve memory through stories, gestures, and seasonal customs. One leaves monuments, the other leaves traces. You enter a workshop where stonecutters prepare a new royal inscription. A damaged block from an older building lies nearby. Its surface bears faint signs, but the foreman orders them cut away. The stone is valuable, the name is not. A worker turns the block and begins smoothing it for reuse. Each strike removes a little more of the older text. No official ceremony marks the erasure. No priest declares that memory has been defeated. The work continues because new construction requires material. Practical decisions can destroy history as thoroughly as deliberate censorship. The same process happens inside archives. Tablets judged useful receive copies. Others remain on shelves until roofs leak, rooms collapse, or storage baskets split. Administrative records become outdated quickly. Ritual texts tied to abandoned cults lose their purpose. Survival depends upon repeated attention. A text copied once may last centuries if conditions remain favorable. A tradition copied every generation can last thousands of years. The Forgotten Order may have lost its copying network. Perhaps political centralization caused that loss. Independent domains became provinces. Local councils became subordinate offices. Their sacred titles no longer matched the language of royal rule. A king benefits from one chain of command. A network of equal keepers offers an awkward precedent. If people remember that authority was once divided among several offices, they may question why one ruler now claims every function. The old system therefore becomes primitive, chaotic or sacred only in a distant symbolic sense. Its political usefulness disappears. A council becomes a group of spirits. A shared measure becomes a divine gift. A regional alliance becomes a mythic age. The memory remains, but its challenge is softened. Researchers at Yale University have examined how states shape historical narratives through selective preservation. Royal inscriptions naturally emphasize continuity, legitimacy, and divine support. Defeats receive less attention. Rival claims are minimized. Political complexity becomes a simpler line leading toward the current ruler. The archive does not necessarily lie. It selects. Selection is enough. Religious reform offers another path toward forgetting. When temples reorganize divine families, older powers may be assigned lower positions. Their festivals become smaller. Their priests lose land. Their sacred objects move into storage. Worship requires resources. Without food offerings, buildings, musicians, and trained reciters, a cult weakens quickly. Families may continue private observances, but public presence fades. The forgotten rulers might disappear because their institutions became poor. A temple once controlling fertile fields loses them to a royal foundation. Its staff deserts. Its archives are transferred. The local guardian remains known for 1 or 2 generations, then survives only inside a larger deity's title. Economic decline becomes theological decline. You follow an elderly woman through a narrow lane near the city wall. She carries a bowl of grain towards a weathered stone set beside a drain. No official inscription marks the place. She leaves 3 small portions, one for the water, one for the ground, one for those who keep the boundary. A young relative asks who receives the offering. The woman answers that it has always been done. The name is already gone. This is how forgetting looks from inside a family. The action survives longer than its explanation. Habit preserves the shape of belief after language has faded. A quirky detail appears in later temple inventories. Officials sometimes listed sacred objects whose functions they no longer understood. A broken emblem might receive a vague label such as Old Divine Implement. The item remained too sacred to discard and too obscure to interpret. Even priests inherited mysteries from their own storage rooms. One can imagine an ancient official opening a chest, discovering an unfamiliar mask, and deciding that returning it quietly was the wisest theological policy. The forgotten tablet may have escaped destruction through similar uncertainty. Its language sounded sacred enough to preserve, but strange enough to avoid regular use. A scribe copied it once, then placed it among miscellaneous traditions. Neglect protected what active reform might have erased. Not every disappearance comes from politics or religion. Simple forgetting remains powerful. A settlement is abandoned when a river changes course. Its people move elsewhere. Children grow up among different neighbors. Old place names become meaningless because the landscape no longer matches the stories. A sacred mound becomes farmland. A shrine becomes a source of bricks. A title becomes an odd expression in a song. 3 generations later, no one remembers why it mattered. The passage of time is less dramatic than conquest, but often more complete. An open scholarly debate concerns how much ancient cultural loss resulted from deliberate suppression compared with ordinary transformation. Some historians emphasize rulers who removed rivals and rewrote legitimacy. Others point toward migration, language change, economic decline, and environmental disruption. Both processes can operate together. A dynasty falls, a temple loses support, a population moves out. A new language enters the schools. No single decision erases the old world, yet every change loosens another thread. The tablet uses an image of woven cloth to describe memory. It says that the first order was unfastened strand by strand. No fire consumes the fabric. No blade cuts it. The weave simply opens. This may be the most accurate explanation. When a ruler replaces a title, one scribe chooses a familiar name, one temple redirects offerings, one family stops performing an old rite, one flood destroys a storage room, one child forgets a song. Later, the missing pattern appears intentional because so little remains. A fringe theory claims that powerful priesthoods deliberately hid the earlier rulers to protect knowledge about humanity's true origin. The evidence does not support one vast coordinated effort. Ancient religious institutions competed, disagreed, and preserved contradictory traditions. Such disorder makes total secrecy unlikely, yet limited acts of concealment were certainly possible. A ruler could destroy a rival inscription. A temple could suppress an unwanted cult. A scribe could replace an inconvenient title. Local heresies accumulate. They do not need one central plan. You enter the archive again as night approaches. Shelves lean beneath the weight of clay. Some baskets are carefully labelled. Others contain fragments without clear order. A small tablet rests behind a larger account of grain. Its edge carries a forgotten title. No one has read it for years. The keeper of the archive chooses which baskets receive repair. Roof damage threatens the western wall. Labour is limited. Important royal records are moved first. The obscure fragments remain. Rain enters through a crack. Water reaches the lower shelf. Several tablets soften and collapse. The loss appears accidental. Its consequences are permanent. History survives through chains of ordinary protection. A roof must be repaired. A language must be taught. A text must be recognized as valuable. A name must be spoken. Break enough links, and the past becomes silence. The Forgotten Order may not have been buried because it was too dangerous. It may have been buried because newer systems no longer needed it. That possibility feels almost colder. A forbidden truth still possesses power. A neglected truth simply fades. You step into the courtyard while evening wind carries dust across the painted walls. The king still receives authority from heaven. Priests still stand behind him. The older council remains beneath the plaster, invisible but not entirely destroyed. Power changed the image, time changed the meaning. Forgetting completed the work. A storyteller sits beside a low fire while shadows move across the walls. Children gather near woven mats. Older listeners remain farther back, working with thread, wood, grain, or leather, while the voice continues. You hear the crackle of dry reeds. The story begins with giants. They once walked across the land before ordinary kings ruled. Their footsteps formed valleys. Their hands raised stones too heavy for later people to move. Some taught farming and law. Others became violent, proud, or careless. No one present asks whether the giants truly lived. The story matters because it explains the landscape. A broken ridge becomes the back of a fallen ruler. A spring becomes the place where a teacher struck the ground. A black stone becomes the eye of an ancient guardian. Memory survives by attaching itself to visible things. The forgotten rulers may have endured through such transformations. Their names disappeared from official records, yet their functions remained useful. Later communities reshaped them as giants, sages, demons, culture bringers, or watchers. Each form preserves a fragment. None preserves the whole. Ancient traditions across Mesopotamia describe beings who existed near the beginning of civilization. Some taught crafts, writing, agriculture, ritual, or law. Others guarded boundaries between the human world and dangerous regions. Their roles overlap with the earlier keepers. A teacher of irrigation resembles a ruler of water. A guardian of fields resembles a spirit of fertility. A judge of roads resembles a watcher at the gate. A keeper of the calendar resembles a sage who reads the stars. The titles change, the duties remain recognizable. Researchers at Oxford University have examined how myths travel across languages, cities, and political systems. Characters often absorb traits from older local figures. A god may inherit the deeds of an ancestor. A hero may take over the achievements of several rulers. Myth rarely preserves one clean biography. It gathers. A story told for centuries becomes a vessel containing many earlier stories. Each generation adds, removes, or reshapes details according to present needs. The result feels ancient because it contains many layers. You follow one such figure through later tradition. He appears as a wise teacher emerging from water. He brings knowledge of building, measurement, agriculture, and sacred practice. His body is described through strange clothing or fish-like imagery. A later listener imagines a supernatural being. An earlier memory might concern a coastal priest, marsh leader, boat traveler, or teacher associated with water. The image grows because water already carries mystery. People disappear beneath it. Boats arrive from unseen places. Floods destroy settlements. Fish emerge from depths no farmer can enter. A ruler connected with marsh knowledge can become something more than human with little effort. The story gives him scales. Time gives him eternity. Another figure appears as a giant standing at the edge of the settled world. He controls a cedar forest. Mountain pass or forbidden valley. His voice shakes the ground. His face terrifies travelers. The imagery may preserve fear of upland guardians. Mountain communities controlled timber, stone, and metals. Their leaders stood between lowland merchants and valuable resources. To outsiders, these figures seemed powerful, foreign, and difficult to approach. A thick wool cloak becomes a massive body. A black mask becomes a monstrous figure. A guarded pass becomes an enchanted forest. The transformation follows emotional truth rather than physical accuracy. The mountain ruler felt larger than ordinary life. Myth made him larger. A third memory survives as a group of 7 sages. They appear during the earliest age, bringing knowledge before catastrophe changes the world. Their number echoes systems of territories, celestial lights, and ritual offices. The sages are not always kings. They teach kings. This change may reflect the needs of later monarchy. A single ruler can accept wisdom from ancient figures without sharing authority with them. The old keepers become advisors rather than sovereigns. Their knowledge remains sacred. Their political independence disappears. That adjustment protects kingship while preserving admiration for the older order. A ruler may claim that ancient sages established civilization, provided they eventually serve the throne. One quirky tradition describes protective figures buried beneath doorways or placed inside walls. Small clay images guarded houses from harmful forces. Their forms might combine human bodies with bird heads and fish skins or animal features. The household sleeps above a hidden assembly of strange guardians. Many families probably considered this perfectly sensible. Modern people place alarms, locks, lights, and cameras around homes. Ancient people used clay beings with impressive hats. Every age chooses its own comforting technology. These figures may preserve distant echoes of boundary keepers. Their task is familiar. They watch entrances, repel danger, and maintain order around human space. A public ruler becomes a private protector. The scale changes. The function survives. Some forgotten powers take darker forms. A guardian denied offerings can become a restless spirit. An ancestral ruler excluded from official ritual may survive as a dangerous presence near ruins, wells, or crossroads. People fear what institutions no longer recognize. A sacred name spoken wrongly becomes a curse. A neglected shrine becomes haunted ground. A former keeper becomes a demon. This transformation does not prove deliberate slander. It follows a common pattern. Powers outside the accepted order often become suspicious. The new system defines protection. Anything remaining beyond it becomes danger. The tablet's unnamed figures could have travelled this path. A ruler of deep water becomes a creature beneath the river. A guardian of winds becomes a storm demon. A boundary judge becomes a night spirit waiting near roads. Later stories preserve the fear but lose the office. You hear sandals squeak along a temple corridor where an apprentice recites protective names. He repeats them carefully because pronunciation matters. The list includes recognized gods, minor spirits, legendary sages, and beings whose origins no teacher explains. The apprentice memorizes function and does not ask for history. One guards the left side, another guards the right, a third watches the threshold, a fourth protects the roof. Old rulers remain useful as long as they stay in assigned places. An open scholarly debate concerns whether mythic beings preserve historical memories or arise mainly from symbolic imagination. Some historians search for echoes of migrations, political offices, or cultural encounters. Others caution that similar roles can emerge independently from common human fears. A gate requires a guardian, a flood invites a destroyer, a craft invites a divine teacher, a mountain invites a giant. Not every resemblance proves direct survival. Still, clusters of resemblance matter. When titles, numbers, duties, and landscapes repeat across traditions, they may preserve an underlying pattern. The pattern need not identify one lost civilization. It may reveal how communities remembered several ancient systems through shared imagery. The hidden order becomes scattered. One part enters flood myth. Another enters royal genealogy, another becomes a household spirit, another rises into the stars, another waits inside a story told to children. No single tradition holds the complete structure. Together, they form a shadow of it. A fringe claim suggests that giants described in ancient texts represent a distinct race of enormous humans. Archaeological evidence has not confirmed such a population. Reports of giant skeletons usually collapse under examination, proving exaggerated, misidentified, or unsupported. Yet giant stories remain historically valuable. They reveal how later societies imagined earlier power. Great size expresses distance, danger, and superiority. A ruler who controls forests, metals, or flood waters may become physically immense because ordinary scale feels inadequate. The giant body is political memory turned into anatomy. Culture bringers undergo a gentler transformation. They arrive from sea, mountain, wilderness, or heaven. They teach people to build houses, plant fields, observe stars, make laws, or preserve records. Such stories compress collective development into one visitor. Generations of experimentation become a lesson. Hundreds of workers become a teacher. Change becomes a gift. The simplification comforts memory. Civilization feels easier to understand when someone delivers it. The teacher may preserve traces of travelers who carried useful knowledge between regions. A new irrigation method, metalworking technique, or calendar system could transform a community. The person introducing it might gain sacred status. One successful season creates gratitude. 10 generations create legend. The old rulers therefore survive most clearly through purpose. They teach, they guard, they measure, they warn, they punish disorder. Their personal identities dissolve because function travels more easily than biography. People forget a ruler's face, family, and birthplace. They remember that someone opened the canal, marked the stars, or protected the pass. Memory keeps what remains useful. You return to the fire where the storyteller describes a giant who sleeps beneath a mound. He will wake when the rivers change course and the old boundaries appear again. The children listen. Listen, Zule. And older woman smiles because she heard the same tale decades earlier. Her version included another name, though she no longer recalls it. The mound remains, the giant remains, the name fades, night deepens beyond the doorway, wind moves through dry grass, stars emerge above the settlement, quiet and fixed. Stories continue where tablets fail. They alter everything except the need to remember. A ruler becomes a sage becomes a giant becomes a demon becomes a guardian beneath the floor. Each transformation carries something forward, though never enough to restore the original shape. The Forgotten Order survives as scattered roles inside later imagination, not as a dynasty, not as proof, as memory-wearing masks. The final edge of the tablet lies beneath a narrow beam of morning light. Its broken surface resembles a shoreline where meaning ends and silence begins. Several signs survive clearly, others disappear into a fracture that removed the lower corner. You watch the translator adjust the lamp. The last complete sentence describes the first rulers gathering at a sealed place beneath the land. They carry no weapons. They bring measures, tokens, and bowls of water from territories whose names have faded. Their authority appears ceremonial. Their purpose remains uncertain. One sign suggests departure. Another may indicate concealment, burial, or return. The sentence can be read as saying that the rulers entered the sealed place when their allotted time ended. It can also mean that they were placed there. The difference depends upon a damaged wedge. If they entered willingly, the passage may describe ritual retirement. Their order might have ended through formal succession, with offices transferred peacefully into a newer divine system. If they were placed there, the tone changes. The rulers may have been imprisoned, buried, erased, or transformed into powers beneath the earth. The tablet refuses to choose. A final title appears near the fracture. It can be translated as Keeper of the Unopened Gate. No comparable office is securely known from other texts. The title may belong to a person responsible for archives, tombs, or restricted sanctuaries. It may name a mythic guardian placed between one age and another. It might also refer to the tablet itself. The clay becomes the gate, reading becomes entry, the missing corner becomes whatever lies beyond. Records confirm that ancient scribes sometimes ended texts with blessings, curses, ownership statements, or appeals to future readers. A tablet could warn against alteration. It might request preservation. It could identify the copyist and the institution that stored the work. No such ending survives here. Instead, the last visible line begins with a conditional phrase, when the hidden names are spoken again. Then the clay breaks. No verb follows. No consequence appears. The sentence offers a condition without an outcome. It waits for an action that the surviving text cannot describe. Perhaps the next words promised restoration. Perhaps they warned of disorder. Perhaps they instructed a ritual reader to continue from memory. The unfinished grammar creates its own atmosphere. The tablet seems to anticipate rediscovery, though that impression may be produced entirely by damage. A broken sentence naturally invites completion. The human mind dislikes open doors. You sit within the quiet museum room while traffic moves beyond thick windows. The ancient fragment rests on a padded support. Its surface carries fingerprints, cracks, salt stains, and the patient marks of a reed stylus. Nothing supernatural occurs. No forgotten ruler appears. No secret chamber opens. Yet the question remains alive because the tablet preserves a sequence later. Tradition rarely emphasize. Authority belongs first to unnamed keepers, divided territories, practical measures, inherited seats, and ceremonial responsibilities. The Anunnaki receive a world already structured. This does not prove that another species governed humanity. It does not establish a hidden empire with impossible technology. The evidence offers no machines, unusual bodies, or clear account of visitors from beyond the earth. Its mystery is older and more human. Civilization may preserve memories of political systems that vanished before writing became stable, local rulers may become gods, offices may become ancestors, landscapes may become divine families. The first order can disappear while its functions continue. A canal still needs management, a field still needs boundaries, a storehouse still requires trust, a calendar still guides planting, a road still belongs to whoever can protect it. The names change because institutions change. The needs beneath them remain. Researchers from Stanford University, Oxford University, Yale University, and other respected centres continue examining how climate, language, migration, religion, and political authority shaped early societies. Their findings resist simple stories. Dynasties do not appear in one moment. Gods do not hold fixed identities forever. Kingship does not descend into an empty world. Every recognized beginning stands upon something less visible. The tablet's final line may preserve awareness of that depth. When the hidden names are spoken again, perhaps listeners are expected to remember that no order is truly first. Every ruler inherits, every temple replaces, every archive selects. Every myth preserves and conceals at once. One curious feature remains near the bottom edge. A tiny impression resembles the tip of a fingernail pressed into wet clay. It may have been accidental. It might mark where the scribe steadied the tablet while finishing the line. The mark sits beside the word hidden. For centuries, the tablet lay beneath soil while that small trace of touch remained. Kingdoms rose and disappeared. Languages changed. Temples collapsed into mounds. The scribe's name vanished completely. His fingernail survived. There is gentle irony in this. The rulers cannot be identified. The copying tradition cannot be traced with certainty. The final sentence cannot be completed. Yet one ordinary gesture remains perfectly visible. The smallest human act outlives the grandest claim. And open scholarly debate surrounds the value of incomplete texts. Some historians prefer cautious silence where evidence fails. Others argue that fragments still reveal structures, assumptions, and tensions even when they cannot provide complete narratives. Both positions protect something important. Caution protects truth from invention. Interpretation protects fragments from becoming meaningless. The difficult work lies between them. You cannot force the tablet to confess. You also cannot pretend it says nothing. It reveals that at least one ancient tradition imagined authority existing before the familiar divine assembly took its seats. Whether those earlier rulers were gods, humans, offices, regions, or metaphors remains unresolved. The categories may overlap. A human leader can become sacred. An office can inherit divine qualities. A landscape can be treated as an assessor. A remembered council can survive as a group of supernatural beings. Ancient thought often joins what modern analysis separates. The final chamber described by the text may belong beneath a temple, inside a mountain, under the earth, or within ritual memory. No excavation has identified it securely. A fringe tradition imagines the sealed place as a hidden archive containing the true history of humanity. Such claims exceed the evidence, yet they reflect a real longing. People want the past to be stored somewhere complete. They want one room where every missing name remains legible. History rarely grants that comfort. Archives burn, clay breaks, languages fall silent, memory travels through imperfect people. Even preserved texts arrive damaged by context, translation, and expectation. The hidden archive may never have existed. The only archive may be the scattered pattern itself. A temple foundation, a strange title, a reused stone, a giant story, a celestial cycle, a family custom whose explanation is gone. Each fragment carries one thread. No single thread reveals the whole design. The tablet's broken line therefore becomes appropriate. A complete ending might offer confidence the evidence cannot support. The fracture preserves uncertainty, honesty. You look again at the surviving words. When the hidden names are spoken again, perhaps the phrase concerns ritual renewal, Perhaps priests once recited forgotten titles during a ceremony marking the transfer of authority. Perhaps the names were spoken only in secret. Perhaps they were never names at all. The museum room grows brighter as morning advances. Dust turns slowly inside the light. The tablet remains unchanged beneath the glass. The search for its rulers reaches no final throne. It reaches a boundary. Beyond that boundary, its imagination must walk carefully. You can picture early communities assigning power through councils, craft specialists, water managers, seasonal watchers, and regional guardians. You can understand how catastrophe might fracture such systems. You can see how later, temples absorbed their functions and gave them newer divine names. This reconstruction is possible. It is not certain. Perhaps the first rulers were remembered leaders from communities buried beneath later cities. Perhaps they were symbolic beings created to explain the ordering of land. It is possible that both memories became joined. A ruler manages water. Later generations call him Master of Rivers. Centuries pass. The title becomes a god. Another city absorbs the cult. The god becomes a servant within a greater assembly. The original person vanishes. Only the function remains. That process requires no hidden conspiracy. It requires time. Time is more thorough than any sensor. You remain beside the tablet while the final light crosses its fracture. The last signs seem darker for a moment, then fade again as the angle changes. No voice rises from the clay. Still, the broken line waits. Perhaps every age speaks hidden names without recognizing them. People repeat customs whose origins they cannot explain. Governments use symbols inherited from vanished powers. Sacred places stand upon older sacred ground. Humanity lives among unrecognized inheritances. The earliest rulers might be gone. Their system may not be. Perhaps they survive whenever society divides responsibility, measures land, stores food, watches the sky, and places authority inside symbols that outlive their holders. Perhaps the forgotten tablet does not reveal who ruled first. Perhaps it reveals how easily rulers become forgotten. Your breathing slows as the museum room recedes from imagination. The clay fragment remains upon its quiet support, no longer demanding an answer. The broken edge softens beneath the fading light. You allow the unanswered sentence to remain unfinished. There is no need to cross every threshold tonight. The old plain settles beneath darkness again. Reeds bend gently beside unseen water. Far mountains hold their cold silence. Abandoned foundations sleep beneath layers of earth, each wall resting upon another forgotten wall. The workers have gone hue. The watchers have left the platform. The scribes have placed their tablets in baskets and lowered their lamps. Only the stars remain above the plain, moving through patterns too slow for one lifetime to measure completely. You imagine the hidden names resting beneath the soil, not imprisoned, not waiting with anger, but simply quiet. Perhaps memory does not vanish. Perhaps it changes form. A title becomes a gesture. A ruler becomes a story becomes a warning. A warning becomes a dream whispered beside a fire. The waters move softly through channels opened by hands no record remembers. Fields darken beneath the night. Empty thrones gather dust inside chambers where no footsteps sound. Nothing needs to awaken. Nothing needs to be solved. The ancient world may keep its final secret. You can let the uncertainty drift around you without fear. It is only the gentle distance between what happened and what can still be known. The tablet does not close the story. It leaves space for silence, and within that silence, the earliest rulers remain neither proven nor erased, but suspended between clay, memory, and the patient darkness beneath history. Your breathing becomes slower. The last lamp dims. The plain grows still. Perhaps the hidden names will never be spoken clearly again. Perhaps they are spoken whenever someone listens carefully to the broken places in the past. And perhaps, beneath every beginning, Another beginning rests quietly, waiting without urgency. Perhaps the final line was never meant to provide an answer. Perhaps it was meant to remind you that history is not a closed chamber. It is a darkened doorway. Beyond it, the dust remains undisturbed. The night continues. The story is not yet complete. Good night.